Don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. There is also a link in the description to my Patreon. It has Naruto fanfiction that cannot be posted on YouTube. There is some free content on there. So, you don't have to be a paying member to enjoy listening to excellent fanfiction. Chapter 1. A Twist in Time. By Wolf08. With Konoha on the verge of destruction, Sakura is sent on a last resort mission to save her world by traveling to the past. Join her in coping with her old body's shortcomings, testing the natural laws of time, falling in love all over again, and rediscovering who she is. The last mission. The soft glow of a crescent moon simmered through a haze of clouds, casting long shadows on abandoned roads and alleys. Enclosed in a forest of trees was Konoha, the village hidden in the leaves, where a medley of civilians and ninjas resided. An uncharacteristic eeriness had swept through the village. The shops were closed down. The doors bolted shut. Darkness. Emptiness. Not a soul stirred tonight. Except for one. As a result of years spent training in the art of survival, Sakura effortlessly concealed the sound of her sandals padding against the surface of the dirt road. She moved swiftly and purposefully, sparing only a glance or two over her shoulder at the empty streets behind her. There was no wind to tug at her pale, pink, shoulder-length hair or light to highlight the emotion brimming behind her emerald green eyes. She arrived at the base of a flight of stairs leading into the tower at the heart of the village and she began to climb them. Her legs quivered in the icy air and her stomach clenched in anticipation. When she reached the top, she hesitated for a moment before disappearing behind a set of doors. "You summoned me?" Sakura asked once the door to the Hokage's office was securely closed behind her. The dimly lit office was cluttered with stacks of dusty books, scrolls, and ninja tools. At the largest desk in the center of the room sat a beautiful, middle-aged woman with blonde hair tied in two parts. "You know why you are here, Sakura," Tsunade replied briskly and beckoning to the chair facing her desk with a wave of her hand. "Please sit down." Sakura obeyed and took a seat facing the village's Hokage and stared expectantly at her mentor's face. Tsunade was so self-assured that even during times of total confusion and chaos, she always knew just what to do. The flicker of doubt that crossed Tsunade's features must have been in Sakura's imagination. The blonde woman rose from her chair and walked to the floor-length window behind the desk, gazing out at her village. "War is upon us," she muttered gravely. The edges of Sakura's ears prickled. This was not news to her, but that sure didn't make the information any easier to digest. The village was on a high-security emergency lockdown and Orochimaru was at large, so it made sense that something terrible was brewing. Tsunade's eyes darted back in Sakura's direction. Sound village spies were detected in the forest on the village's outskirts. After capturing and interrogating one, an ANBU Black Ops team confirmed that he will strike tonight. Sakura's chest tightened. Hearing the words spoken aloud made the reality of the situation really sink in. The war on Konoha was at its inception. Her nightmares would soon be realized. "Tsunade-sama, how many villagers know? Have you started warning the people of Konoha?" Sakura asked, feeling a wave of panic come over her. Hundreds of helpless families were locked in their homes across the village. Including her own. "I intend to in an hour or so. If I have to," Tsunade muttered, returning to the desk and rifling through a stack of papers distractedly. Confused by her response, Sakura asked, "You mean, you've planned a preemptive attack?" Tsunade lifted her head and gazed directly at Sakura's face. "Something like that," she said flatly, her eyes twinkling. Sakura was baffled by her mentor's calm facade. Tsunade dropped the stack of papers on the desk with a dismissive air. "I'm afraid we're greatly outnumbered, Sakura. Our troops will stand no chance if this war carries out. It must be stopped." Sakura nodded, unsure what to make of Tsunade's comment. The Hokage was right, of course. The ninjas of Konoha rarely fought as a single unit and were anything but ready to assemble against a threat like this. In fact, most of the village's ninjas were currently hiding with their families under the false impression that the lockdown was happening because of a prison breakout. Very few had the faintest idea that Orochimaru was planning to attack, let alone launch the attack today. Sakura, being the Hokage's apprentice and confidant, tended to have the upper hand in learning important information in a timely manner. A part of her had known from the moment the lockdown was announced that this was no ordinary procedure. The climate in the Hokage Tower over the past several weeks had told her as much. "Tsunade-sama, may I ask what your plan is?" Sakura asked hesitantly. She had a nagging feeling that her mentor was withholding a crucial piece of information. Tsunade lowered her eyes to the desk and paused before answering. "Sakura, in the years I have known you, you have flourished not only as my apprentice, but as an independent and determined warrior. You have demonstrated fierce loyalty to my village and most importantly of all, I trust you." Sakura stared on blankly. This is hardly a time for flattery. What is she getting at? Lacing her fingers together, Tsunade's expression hardened. "You are a perfect candidate for this mission. It'll be a huge wager, but I've got a good feeling about it. You see, I would go on the mission myself, but the years have worn my abilities thin." Sakura was perched on the edge of her seat and her mind was reeling. "What?" "Sakura, I am assigning you the mission of stopping Orochimaru in his tracks." Sakura's jaw dropped. "To the best of your ability, of course," Tsunade added with a smile, as if that would somehow take the edge off her loaded declaration. Sakura was dumbstruck. "Tsunade-sama, I'm not sure what you're planning, but I'm a medical ninja," she stammered through the growing dryness in her throat. "I'm trained to support powerful ninjas, not to be one. Sure, I've grown a lot in the past few years, but I'm not nearly qualified to stop a Sannin on my own." Sakura had risen to her feet and found that her palms were clammy and her breathing had quickened. But her green eyes held traces of steadfast defiance. Whatever Tsunade was plotting sounded like complete insanity. But Tsunade's determination did not waver either. Acknowledging Sakura's emotional spiral, she got to her feet and approached the spot where her prized student was standing. "I'll get to the point then," she said. "So there's this forbidden scroll I never told you about. Opening it comes at great cost, but as it stands, the potential gains outweigh it." Tsunade placed a hand on her apprentice's shoulder and guided her back into the chair. "What?" Sakura asked. "What scroll?" Her heart was pounding. "Listen to me carefully now, Sakura. Should you accept this mission, your life will never be the same. And if you play your cards right, neither will mine. The powers in this scroll will give you a chance to change our fates. And rewrite the past." Sakura's mind was racing. Rewrite the past? Could she mean time travel? Sakura whispered, her eyes glazing over with realization. Tsunade smirked. "Precisely." It was at that very moment that a resonating bang sounded through the village. An explosion. Both women raced to the window and spotted in the distance, along the wall near the village gates, an enormous cloud of smoke and flames. "Come with me, quickly," Tsunade hissed, traces of panic appearing in her voice. She led Sakura to a staircase that descended to the lower floors of the tower. "Time travel?" Sakura repeated, her body growing numb with shock and confusion. "This scroll will send me back in time?" "We don't have long to discuss the details," Tsunade called over her shoulder. "But yes. If you agree to this mission, you will devote the remainder of your life to it. And sacrifice your entire existence up until this day. The bonds you have made will disappear and must be rebuilt, or not." Tsunade paused when they reached a door, which she unlocked and opened. Behind the door was another flight of stairs leading them down into the dark, lower chambers of the tower. This was all too much to take in. Time travel. Sakura was trying to wrap her head around the very concept that a scroll containing such powers existed. "What about you? What will happen to you?" Sakura asked hurriedly. "Well, I don't know. If you fail the mission, I'll end up right here, I suppose," she said as they neared the bottom of the staircase. I'd much rather be retired, honestly. My hope would be that you find a way to make that happen sooner. The gears were spinning wildly in Sakura's head. This world would literally be erased. As they neared a door at the end of the dark hallway, another explosion sounded, even larger than the last. It was as though an earthquake struck and Sakura pressed her hand to the wall for support. The attack is real, Sakura realized as fear started coursing through her. The village really could perish. Tsunade placed her palm on the door and raised her other hand to perform hand seals while muttering words under her breath. Sakura recognized the jutsu as an unlocking seal. The door opened. Quickly, inside. Tsunade prodded it open and guided Sakura through the entrance. Once the door was bolted shut behind them, Tsunade spoke again, a grim expression settling on her face. The fate of our world will be resting on your shoulders. It's quite a burden to bear, but I have faith in you. She turned to the shelves and cabinets lining the concrete walls of the dark room and began rifling through them. And, I believe that given the opportunity to alter the past, there is someone dear to you who you would save. Am I right? Sakura's heart clenched. Him. Why did Tsunade have to bring that up at a time like this? Her thoughts grew foggy. Sakura opened her mouth but immediately closed it because she didn't know what to say. Tsunade returned to Sakura with a box, a vial of liquid, and a scroll. The time travel scroll, Sakura presumed. Is this actually happening? Events will play out as they were meant to until you intervene. You may discover that you don't have to change much. Set objectives for yourself and stick to them. Consider what aspects of your past life could mend the present, Tsunade said while rummaging through the medical supply box and pulling out a syringe. Sakura's mouth was parched. The stress of re-entering her past life would be unbearable. How would she know what to change? How would she decide what objectives to prioritize? But on the other hand, what would become of her if she refused this opportunity altogether? Just then, another earthquake-like force swept through the village. This time, however, the earthquake wasn't accompanied by an explosion. And this time, it was more vicious and prominent than the last. Sakura struggled to keep her balance and Tsunade held tightly to the items she had brought forward. Earth style. Tsunade snarled, and Sakura realized immediately that Tsunade was referring to one of Orochimaru's signature styles of attack. He was using ninjutsu to tunnel through the earth and enter the village from the ground beneath it. Keep in mind. Tsunade continued over the violent shaking and the crashing as items tumbled from the shelves and onto the concrete floor. Keep in mind that each and every decision you make will have a lasting impact on the world as we know it. Do you understand? Yes. Sakura called over the maddening sounds of glass shattering and the ground rumbling. It was hard to take in the immensity of Tsunade's words, or even focus on her at all. Sakura was now clutching the wall to steady herself. Tsunade filled the syringe with a pale, blue liquid. And then, with the needle in one hand and the scroll in the other, she turned to face Sakura fully. Sakura Haruno, she said, her expression grim but stern. Do you accept this mission? Sakura began. She was struggling to form coherent sentences. What should she say? With all the noise and reverberating explosions, it was hard to even form a coherent thought. And it was that very realization that prodded Sakura to answer, while shoving aside her internal screams of protest. I accept, Tsunade-sama. Next thing she knew, Sakura was on her knees facing her mentor, the scroll placed in her lap and the syringe poised in Tsunade's hand. You must understand, before you go, that when you begin your new life, this life will freeze. However, if you die in your new life before it reaches this present day, the power of the scroll will be undone. And this life will resume except that you will be dead, Tsunade explained. The wheels were turning in Sakura's mind. But if I do make it to this day in my new life, this timeline will be overridden. You, and the rest of the new world, will be free to carry on with life as if this one never existed. Sakura gulped. She had to survive up until this day in her new life. And Sakura, the scroll must not fall into the wrong hands. Certain individuals hold the power to undo the spell and likely at the expense of your life. Sakura nodded stiffly. It was as though her ability to feel emotions was switched off. Yes, Tsunade-sama, was all she could muster. The floor continued to shake violently beneath them. Now, right after I inject you with this syringe, you will open the scroll. Got it? Sakura dipped her head in understanding, her hands trembling with panic and confusion. Is this the right choice? There is something special about you, Sakura, Tsunade said. I'm sure I'll take you as an apprentice in your new life. She gripped Sakura's forearm with her free hand just as the black criss-crossing marks of the creation rebirth technique spiraled down her own arm. Sakura felt a stream of calming, regenerative chakra enter her body. A sharp, tingling pain spread through her neck. Tsunade injected the liquid. Instinctively, Sakura pulled open the scroll. Very quickly, the room started melting away. Black spots appeared at the corners of her eyes and the walls caved in and twisted out of proportion as if the natural properties of space and time no longer existed. The ceiling was getting lower and lower, the shelves and cabinets shrinking and dissolving. And through all this, Sakura's mind was wandering. Where was Orochimaru now? Where were her family and friends? Sakura, came Tsunade's distant, hazy voice. What about him? Sakura used all of her energy to focus on the face of her mentor, which was being obscured by rapidly expanding black spots. You might not create a perfect world, Sakura. But whatever you create, I'm betting that it will sure as hell be better than the one we've got now. Sakura felt a sudden, manic urge to laugh. Tsunade Senju, famously regarded in casinos across the ninja world as the biggest loser, was betting on Sakura to save the world. What on earth did she get herself into? Good luck, Sakura. Everything went black. Chapter 2 Team 7 Reunited. Sakura woke to the warmth of the morning sun on her face. Her eyes fluttered open to reveal that she was in her room curled up in bed. Sunbeams were shining through the open window and a soothing summer breeze sent a pleasing chill across her exposed skin. But all contented feelings were staunched when Sakura's eyes flickered in the direction of the night table. Her framed picture of Team 7 was gone, Sakura realized with a surge of panic. And then, with a second surge of panic, she remembered that this was not her bedroom anymore. Sakura shot up and instantly noticed that her body was far lighter, far easier to lift, but also that her arms didn't give her the leverage she expected them to. She spluttered, just as a long strand of hair flopped in front of her face. A long strand? That was when her mind was flooded with memories of recent events. The war. The scroll. Tsunade-sama. She yelled, springing to her feet and reaching for the knife she always kept under her pillow only to find that it wasn't there. Thud. A familiar scroll tumbled off her bed and onto the hardwood floor. The reality of it all began to sink in. Sakura dashed to the body-length mirror on the opposite side of the room and when her eyes laid on what was reflected in its surface, her breath caught in her throat. Scrawny legs. Flat chest. A face that hadn't quite grown into its huge, green eyes and broad forehead. Long and matted pink hair. This was unreal. She really was a younger version of herself. 5 or 6 years younger, at least. In a daze, she returned to the bed and picked the scroll up off the floor. After a quick examination, she deduced that it was indeed the time travel scroll. It worked. It actually worked. This wasn't a dream. She had been carried back in time to save Konoha. That was when she remembered Tsunade's parting words. The scroll must not get into the wrong hands. Certain individuals hold the power to undo the spell and likely at the expense of your life. Right. She needed to protect it. Sakura immediately dismissed the idea of keeping the scroll on her person. It would make her vulnerable. She needed a safe place to hide it. But after a quick glance around the room, Sakura realized that she hardly had any safekeeping options. She made a mental note to look into purchasing something jutsu-resistant. But in the meantime, she needed to think of a place that no one would bother checking. Hastily, Sakura opened her underwear drawer and shoved the scroll inside. She made a hand seal and cast a transformation jutsu over the scroll, transforming it into a pair of red underwear. Now, unless she had some kind of perverted stalker, the scroll was safe. For now. Her relief was short-lived. Immediately after performing the jutsu, Sakura's breathing hitched and the knees of her skinny legs buckled slightly. In that moment she realized that her chakra reserve was much smaller than it had been, well, what felt like moments ago. However slight, the physiological repercussions of chakra depletion were already present in her increased heart rate, tired limbs, cold extremities. And all thanks to a basic transformation jutsu that she could have performed in her sleep in her previous life. You've gotta be kidding me. What the hell had Tsunade honestly expected her to accomplish in a state like this? Sakura made a second mental note to do some intense training. As soon as possible. But on a positive note. Her prized skill in chakra control seemed to be intact. She just had much less chakra to work with. She glanced around the room, her heart thrumming restlessly. What next? Her mind was still hazy and she was on the cusp of a full-blown hyperventilation. Focus, Sakura. What do you need to do now? Well, according to Sakura's ninja instincts, first and foremost she needed a line of defense. She started scanning the room for her supply of weapons. Instantly, she caught sight of a small weapon pouch on her desk. She rushed over and snapped it open. A meager 10 shuriken and single kunai knife were inside. Sakura gritted her teeth. How on earth did I ever function with so few of these? She scoured the room, rummaging through the drawers and shelves but came out empty-handed. But realistically, Sakura didn't have much use for a stockpile of weapons back when she was at the academy, or so she had once naively thought. She would have to purchase some. And medical supplies. But then it occurred to her that if she really was just an academy kid again, she probably didn't have much money. Assuming she was a young teenager and hadn't started going out on missions, her only income was an allowance from her parents. Sakura made yet another mental note to get herself a part-time job. Ideally, at the hospital. So, what now? Well, for one thing, she needed to get rid of all of this damn hair. Now, having bright pink hair certainly had its assets. As a medical ninja, it made her easily recognizable on a battlefront. And, not to mention, it was hard for people to forget her after only a single meeting, which was particularly useful when she met new boys. But long pink hair? She might as well paint a target on her back. And maintaining this much hair was time-consuming and impractical. So without further delay, Sakura grabbed the sole kunai from her weapon holster with one hand, gripped onto her hair with the other hand, and ran the blade across the strands, severing about 10 inches off the length. When she let her hair drop back into place, it fell just above her shoulders. Ah. Much better. Sakura proceeded to sweep the hair from the ground, clean up in the bathroom, and pull on one of her old, red training dresses. And damn, did that ever feel weird. She'd tossed away her old dresses ages ago, and she quickly remembered why she switched to a sleeveless style when she was older. The sleeves on this dress and its thick, heavy material were going to drive her insane. Once Sakura was ready, she figured she would head downstairs and try to get a sense of what day it was. And then she would start planning. Setting objectives, as Tsunade put it. With a spike of adrenaline, she grabbed her head protector, wallet, and weapon pouch from her desk and went downstairs. As she neared the main floor, she heard a familiar voice from the kitchen call, "Sakura. Is that you?" Sakura froze at the base of the stairs. It was her mother. Since she moved out to her own apartment, she didn't see much of her parents. And what felt like moments ago, in Sakura's old life, her parents were locked in this very house, hiding from the war and destruction sweeping through the village. Sakura's mind was flooded with emotions. Her parents were safe. And they were right here. Her mother appeared around the corner and before she thought better of it, Sakura threw her arms around her. "Mom, I am so happy to see you," she cried, struggling to keep her composure. "Sakura!" her mother exclaimed in response, her green eyes narrowing. "Your hair." Sakura let her arms fall and blinked in confusion. Oh. Right. She'd just cut her hair for, as far as her mother knew, the first time in her life. Her mother, Mabuki, smirked, her demeanor shifting. Well, I guess it's only fitting to have a brand new look for your first day as a ninja, she said while examining one of Sakura's newly chopped strands. Come on. Let me touch up the ends while you have your breakfast. First day? Mabuki rolled her eyes and shot Sakura a knowing smile. Don't play dumb with me. It's all you've been talking about for weeks. Sakura ogled at her mother before stammering out, yes, of course. My first day. She entered the kitchen and let the words sink in. If what her mother said was true, today Sakura would be assigned to her team. To Team 7. That's right. They were here. Her boys were here. Naruto, still young, brimming with positive energy, and oblivious to the many years of violence and wars that would befall him. Kakashi, protective and collected, and totally unaware of the evil that would infiltrate the relationships among his soon-to-be disciples. And Sasuke. Sasuke. Here, in the village. Lost, confused, and moody, sure, but untainted. Genuinely good. And, above all, not an enemy of the Hidden Leaf Village. It was so much to grasp. Consumed by new feelings of anxiousness and curiosity, Sakura wolfed down her food, thanked her mother for breakfast, grabbed her things, and bolted out the door. It was quite surreal to walk through the lively, crowded roads of Konoha when what felt like only hours before, these very streets were silent and abandoned. Sakura passed shops with doors left ajar and parents scrambling after children who were darting through the throng of passers-by. She neared the Yamanaka flower shop and saw a much younger version of Ino, her best friend and rival, walking out the front door. Her blue eyes landed on Sakura immediately. Sakura! She called, followed by Sakura? What have you done? Ino approached in what appeared to be a state of total shock, gaping at Sakura's head. You cut it? Sakura blinked. Oops. She didn't think the stupid haircut would matter this much. Yes. I figured I would try out a brand new look for my first day as a ninja, she said, reciting her mother's words and trying to force some confidence into her tone. Ino eyed her suspiciously. Trying to get him to notice you, huh? She asked bitterly. Well, it isn't going to work. Everyone knows that Sasuke prefers girls with long hair. She tossed her long, blonde ponytail back with a flick of her wrist for emphasis, a triumphant grin on her face. Sakura contained her chuckle. She'd forgotten how petty she and Ino had once been. We'll just have to see, Sakura tried with a sly smirk, figuring there wasn't any harm in playing along. Then she walked with Ino to the academy. Ino, who seemed a little thrown off by Sakura's lack of outlandish competitiveness, did most of the talking, filling her in about the hair products and cute boys that she may not be aware of. Sakura nodded and offered words of encouragement at all the right times, but as they neared the school, Sakura was struck by a powerful realization. It felt like a game, this chit-chat with Ino. This fake young teenage girl persona. But this was her life now. She was trapped in this body, surrounded by these people, and there was no going back. And no one to ask for guidance or help. For all she knew, Tsunade was currently drunk in a small-town casino, gambling away all her money. In fact, Sakura was 99% sure that was exactly what Tsunade was doing. When they arrived at the academy, Sakura told Ino she needed to stop somewhere before going to class. Are you okay, Sakura? Ino asked and folding her arms across her chest. You aren't as talkative as you usually are. Are you sick? Damn, Sakura thought. She was certain she'd been doing a good job maintaining her facade. Just a little nervous. Big day ahead of us, right? She feigned a smile. Ino cast her a disbelieving glance. You realize that I get first dibs on the seat next to Sasuke, right? She asked, as if this piece of information would prompt Sakura to change her mind. Yeah, I guess you do, Sakura said, unsure of what else to say. Ino shrugged and bounded off to the classroom. Sakura started wandering the academy halls. She desperately needed to be alone. She needed to think. So far today she'd played along with events as they'd unfolded. Shouldn't she be doing something better with her time? Something productive? She had a powerful insight that she ought to take advantage of. Saving the village from its future destruction needed careful and long-winded preparation. The sooner she set some clear objectives for herself, the better. But where was she supposed to begin? Did it make sense to join Team 7 and later bring her teammates into this mess when they were strong enough to help her? But how would she ever get them to do as she asked? How would she, a young homegrown genin of Konoha, manage to convince anyone in the village that she knew anything about the world outside of it? Bump. Caught off guard, Sakura jumped back and reached in her weapon holster for her kunai, only to realize that she had walked into none other than Kakashi. Kakashi-sensei! She exclaimed, immediately returning the knife back into the pouch strapped to her leg. She faced a familiar, scrutinizing look, with Kakashi's visible eyebrow shooting up towards his head protector. A frown had surely formed somewhere beneath his mask. Gosh, he hasn't aged a bit. Kakashi folded his arms, gazing at the pouch she was returning the kunai to. You know of me, huh? He asked slowly. Whoops. She forgot that he technically wasn't her sensei yet. Her mentor and teacher for the past 5 years, one of Sakura's primary confidants, and the man who shaped her into the ninja she was didn't even know her. Her chest tightened. I've heard great things about you, sensei, she said with a small bow. You are one of the most highly respected jonin around here. She offered a smile and prayed to the gods that he would believe her. I see, he said, raising an eyebrow. What's your name? Haruno. Sakura Haruno, she said. Kakashi nodded, carefully studying her face. Shouldn't you be with the other genin? He asked. Today you will be assigned a team. Yes, I suppose I should be, she mumbled. I guess I'll be going then. She turned on her heel and stalked off towards the classroom. As she walked away, Kakashi Hatake watched her retreating figure. He was aware that a genin named Sakura Haruno would be assigned to his team, but he hardly knew a thing about her. He had been far too preoccupied learning about his other new disciples, the prestigious Sasuke Uchiha and the troublemaking Naruto Uzumaki. As far as he knew, Sakura Haruno was nothing but a studious, straight-A student with minimal real-world ninja experience. But if that really was the case, why was her immediate reflex to draw a weapon when she'd bumped into him? Maybe there was more to this girl than he had thought. And maybe the kid was just a big bundle of nerves today. Either way, he decided he would keep a close eye on her. In a daze, Sakura threw open the classroom door and walked in. The room was packed with students and Irika was standing at the front, assembling his papers and preparing for his introductory speech. The young genin were starting to hop down from the desks and take their seats for the lecture. Sakura scanned the room for an empty spot that she could sneak to unnoticed. Sakura-chan. A familiar voice rang out. Oh no. I've saved you a seat. Leave it to Naruto to blow my cover. Sakura spotted the grinning blonde boy at the far end of the room, beckoning for her to join him like she was the only thing in the world that mattered. And she couldn't help her mood lifting at the sight. The boy she'd come to see as her brother and dear friend was here. He was safe. He was happy. As she approached him at the desk, she felt like she was floating through a dream, and her ear-to-ear smile was impossible to suppress. Seeing Naruto, the hyperactive boy jumping up and down in a bright, orange jumpsuit, was the greatest thing that had happened to her since she woke up. In fact, this small moment of pleasure was enough to distract her from her time-traveling predicament, however briefly. That was when she heard a loud gasp. Sakura-chan! Naruto exclaimed. Where's your hair? The entire room silenced. All heads turned in her direction. Then the classroom was filled with murmuring. Why did she do that? She looks terrible. Trying to look tough, huh? Maybe her hair fell out? Maybe she's balding. Sakura clenched her jaw and stalked over to the seat beside Naruto, deliberately tuning out all of the chatter. For the love of God, how superficial these people are. Is this really what the ninjas of Konoha cared about at this age? A silly haircut? Only once she'd taken her seat did the classroom's volume resume normal levels. Naruto was sitting on her right, and she noticed a young, feeble-looking Hinata with a dark bob cut sitting behind her. She started scanning her surroundings, taking in the faces of her friends. It was quite a lot to process. They were all so much smaller. And relaxed. The carefree air wafting through the room was so refreshing yet so unnatural. None of these kids really knew of the dangers that lurked beyond Konoha's borders. "Where's your hair?" Naruto repeated, but she barely heard him because something else caught her attention. Her eyes were locked on the back of the boy sitting directly in front of her. He was here. Wearing a signature blue shirt with his family crest on the back. No sword protruding from his waistline. No curse mark on his neck. No scratch through the leaf symbol on his head protector designating him a rogue ninja and a traitor. Sasuke. "Hey, billboard bro!" screeched a familiar, obnoxious voice. Sakura jumped. Ino, who was sitting next to Sasuke, had taken notice of the direction of Sakura's fixated gaze. "Take your eyes off my man, would you? I'm sure he doesn't want you drooling all over his back." Sakura blinked several times and tried to reorient herself. She turned and noticed Naruto's crestfallen expression. And Ino's triumphant grin. A few others in the surrounding seats had turned towards the scene at the sound of Ino's voice. Sakura felt defensive. "I was looking at the blackboard, Ino pig," she said, trying out the old nickname she'd assigned her rival. "If you'd pay attention to something besides a certain classmate of ours every now and then. Maybe you'd clue in that Iruka-sensei is trying to begin the lecture." Ino and Naruto's jaws dropped. Before either of them had a chance to speak, Sakura added, in a quieter tone, "And Naruto, I'm sorry for taking so long to answer your question. I cut my hair because long hair just gets in the way." Naruto squinted at her in confusion, probably puzzling over what exactly long hair got in the way of. Ino was visibly fuming. And, to Sakura's surprise, Sasuke turned around to look her over. He didn't seem particularly pleased by anything Sakura had just said, with how his dark eyes were narrowed and his mouth was pulled into a frown. Of all weird things to happen that day, this was by far the weirdest. God, the last time she'd stared into these very eyes, they were stained red, filled with real malice and bloodthirst, and utterly unfamiliar. So, needless to say, a glare from this Sasuke was nothing she couldn't handle. Sakura had no trouble holding her ground and returning the hard, cold stare, which she hoped communicated something along the lines of "turn around and pay attention." To Sakura's relief, Iruka cleared his throat and addressed the class only moments later. Sasuke, Naruto, Ino, and the others turned back around to face the front of the class. Damn it, Sakura thought. It was dawning on her that the simple act of cutting her hair had changed the past, the present, or whatever this was. And as a result, the future could change too. She needed to be very selective about her words and actions because each one would have rippling effects on the rest of her new life. How would she live like this? How would she ever make decisions if she was so conscious of the impacts of every word she said and of her very existence? Sakura realized that she had zoned out from Iruka's introductory speech and only tuned back in when he was announcing the teams. Soon he reached Team 7. Naruto Uzumaki. Sakura Haruno. Yes. Naruto cheered. And Sasuke Uchiha. No. Naruto cried. Team 7 was officially formed. For the second time. Chapter 3: The Bet. Iruka dismissed the class of new genin for a 1-hour lunch break before the teams would be introduced to their leaders. Sakura figured that would give her enough time to slip into the village and get a sense of how many weapons and supplies she could currently afford. She may even have a chance to drop by the hospital and ask if they had any part-time job openings. "Oh Sakura!" came Naruto's sing-song voice from somewhere behind her. Sakura froze in her tracks, took a deep breath, and turned to face him. Naruto, who had been jogging after Sakura, skidded to a halt when he reached her. Well, since we're on the same team and all, I thought maybe we could have lunch together and get to know each other better. What do you say? A bashful smile danced on his lips. Sakura felt her own smile sprout. She had no doubt that her former self would have rejected Naruto without a second thought. But now things were different. Over the years, she'd grown to understand why this guy behaved the way he did. Yes, he was annoying and attention-seeking, but only because he was lonely and had been shunned by the village throughout his formative childhood years. He just wanted someone to notice him. And right now, that someone he wanted attention from was Sakura. His eyes were twinkling as he stared at her in anticipation. Sakura chuckled and shook her head. I was going to head into the village to run some errands, she said. Naruto's face fell. But you are welcome to tag along if you'd like. He perked up instantly. Naruto jumped up and down with excitement. Yes, yes, he exclaimed. I mean, that sounds way less lame than hanging around the academy for lunch, huh? He added with what he probably thought was a cool, indifferent eye roll, but the look was spoiled by his smiling and fidgeting. Sakura laughed and beckoned for him to follow her. Not long after, once they neared the edge of the academy grounds, Naruto said, You know, Sakura-chan, I thought you'd want to hang out with that jerk who we're supposed to be teammates with now. People always follow him around even though he hates everyone. Sakura shrugged. I have errands to do, she said absently. But then she let Naruto's remark sink in and had a change of heart. A quick detour was in order. Maybe we can all start things off on a better note this time. She stopped walking. Actually, on second thought Naruto, I think we should find him, she said. Naruto blanched. Who? Sasuke? Why? Sakura folded her arms. Well, for the same reason we're spending our lunch break together. If we're stuck on the same team from here on out, we can at least try to be friends. That sounds like the worst idea ever, Naruto grumbled. He'll never want to be friends with us. But then he got a mischievous glint in his eye. But you know, Naruto added thoughtfully, I wouldn't mind putting that jerk in his place before he starts thinking he can walk all over me. That's not. It's settled then. Let's find the jerk. Naruto bellowed and stomping back towards the academy. Sakura covered her face and exhaled deeply, hoping beyond hope that her attempt to curb the ferocity of Naruto and Sasuke's rivalry before it began wouldn't completely backfire. They found Sasuke hiding amongst the crates in the empty storage area, leaning against a windowsill. He was gazing out at the academy grounds with a faraway expression on his face. One look at him told Sakura that he didn't want to be disturbed. But it was too late now. There the bastard is, Naruto muttered before yelling out, Sasuke. It's team bonding time. Sasuke glanced at them, his expression cold and calculating. What? He muttered, raising his eyebrows and eyeing them suspiciously. Sakura's stomach flipped for reasons she couldn't explain. She cleared her throat. I thought we should all get to know each other better since we'll be on a team from here on out, she clarified while Naruto nodded at her side. Ah, he answered and averting his gaze dismissively. Thanks, but I'd rather not. He seemed uneasy, Sakura noticed, with the rigid way he held himself. See, Sasuke was just as lonely and isolated as Naruto was, except that he coped by embracing his loneliness and avoiding people, a sharp contrast to Naruto's coping methods indeed. What? Naruto bellowed and raising a fist in Sasuke's direction. Look, Sakura-chan and I came all the way over here to have lunch with you, just for you to tell us to leave? Why's that? You'd better have a good excuse. It's fine, Naruto. Let's go, Sakura tried, but he didn't seem to hear her. I don't need to explain myself to you, Sasuke said coolly and keeping his eyes locked on the open window. Fine then. How about our fists do the talking instead? Naruto assumed a battle stance and Sakura rubbed her temples. This boy was just looking for any excuse to fight. And there was nothing she could say to stop him now. Bring it on, bastard. Then Naruto lunged at his opponent, forcing Sasuke to leap through the window to dodge. But Naruto was in pursuit, and before Sakura knew it, the two of them were through the window and out of sight. Well, I tried. She could only hope that these scraps would serve as good character builders. Because she highly doubted there was anything she could do to stop them. So, what now? Sakura glanced at her pocket watch and noticed that she still had 45 minutes left in the lunch break, just enough time to run her errands as she originally planned. But to Sakura's dismay, just about every weapon and medical product that caught her eye was priced way over her budget. So were the devices she needed to protect the time travel scroll. She spotted a small safe that claimed to be jutsu-resistant in a ninja equipment shop. It would make an ideal hiding place for the scroll, but it would cost her every penny she had and more. Sakura stormed out, ignoring stares from the much older and tougher-looking ninjas in the shop, and made her way to the hospital. She still had 20 minutes left. And she desperately needed an income of some sort since her team wouldn't encounter missions with any worthwhile profit for quite some time. But Sakura's luck didn't improve. The receptionist wouldn't even let her speak to any human resources personnel, claiming that she was not of age to work in such a serious, grown-up environment. Sakura was tempted to show off her advanced knowledge and skills to the receptionist right there on the spot, but she resisted the urge, for that would surely raise questions that no one would believe her answers to. The receptionist did, however, take Sakura's name and number and promise to distribute them among the doctors who may be interested in a volunteer assistant. Sakura's spirits had fallen considerably as she trudged back towards the academy with 1 minute to spare. It doesn't matter if I'm late anyways. I'll probably still get their ages before Kakashi-sensei. Sakura arrived at the classroom she and the other members of Team 7 had been assigned to assemble in. She pulled open the sliding door, took a step inside, and then her ninja instincts were on full alert. Something was plummeting towards her head. It didn't take long for her mind to put two and two together. Naruto's eraser prank. Sakura swiped at the falling object with more force than she initially intended, and with a crack, sliced the chalkboard eraser clean down the middle, ruining Naruto's prank on their new sensei. Whoa, Naruto said in disbelief. Those are some pretty intense reflexes, Sakura-chan. He was standing only a few feet away. Sasuke was watching the scene play out with his elbows propped up on one of the desks and his chin resting on his hands. He looked completely unfazed. And as expected, Kakashi was nowhere in sight. Sorry, Naruto, Sakura mumbled while taking a seat. I'm feeling a little off, I guess. Naruto didn't seem to hear her. He was grabbing a fresh eraser from the ledge of the chalkboard. I don't mean to start a fight or anything, Sakura-chan, but you ruined my prank for the new sensei, so I'm upset with you, he said matter-of-factly while positioning the new eraser on the top ledge of the door in hope that it would successfully land on the next target's head. Naruto, our sensei is a jonin, drawled Sasuke, who was making no attempt to conceal his annoyance. If she didn't fall for it, what makes you think he will? Really? Sakura's defensive spirit roused. Wanna bet? Sakura chimed in with a smirk. She had quite an unfair advantage since she already knew Kakashi would fall for the prank. But her desire to prove Sasuke wrong outweighed her guilt over cheating. He turned to look at her, his eyebrows raised. Are you serious? He asked in a disbelieving tone. Yes. Sasuke paused. What does the winner get? Sakura rolled her eyes. Typical. How about the loser owes them one, she said. The winner decides what? He shrugged. Whatever. Taking Sasuke's flippant remark as an affirmation, Sakura turned away to hide her budding grin. It would be satisfying to beat him. Meanwhile, Naruto was chuckling from the doorway. Oh. He's coming, he's coming. Shoo. They all stared at the door in anticipation, and soon a hand grabbed its edge to pull it open. They watched the eraser descend towards Kakashi's head as if in slow motion. Here it comes. Sweet victory is. Swish. Crack. Huh? Said Kakashi while glancing up at the ceiling. What? Naruto and Sakura yelled in unison. To their surprise, remnants of the eraser were splayed across the classroom floor and a kunai was embedded in the wall just above where Kakashi was standing. Sakura pieced it all together and rounded on the smirking Uchiha sitting beside her. "You cheater!" she hissed. "You never specified any rules against cheating," he answered. Sakura rubbed her temples. "Karma is a bitch." Naruto was fuming. "Why is everybody trying to ruin my brilliant prank?" he cried while dropping to his knees and staring up at the ceiling for dramatic effect. Kakashi looked dumbfounded. "My first impression of you guys is, you're a bunch of idiots," he said. Sakura shook her head. "I guess some things will never change." Kakashi ushered the new team to the roof of the academy for some fresh air and because you don't learn the important things in classrooms. He instructed his 3 students to take their seats on the wide, concrete steps and took his own perch across from them on the metal rail at the edge of the roof. "All right, Team 7, he said, "now I'd like each of you to say a few words about yourself." "Like what kind of words?" Naruto asked. How about the things you like, things you dislike, your hobbies, dreams for the future?" "Words like that." Wait, I don't get it." "You go first, sensei." Sakura could hardly suppress her snigger. Naruto's older self wasn't the sharpest tool in the shed either. But apparently he had come a long way. Kakashi raised an eyebrow. "Fine then," he said. "My name is Kakashi Hitaki. As for things I like and dislike? I haven't really thought about it. My dream for the future? I can't tell you that. And my hobbies? I have lots of them." Classic. But that was when it dawned on her that she would have to give a spiel about herself. Her heart began to drum. "I can't tell them the complete truth and risk dropping any hints that I'm from the future. No way." "Okay, you on the right. You're first." "But I don't want to sign myself up for living a lie for the rest of my life. A fake persona would surely crack with time, especially given how perceptive her sensei was." Naruto sat up straight and started fiddling with his head protector. "Okay, so as you all know, I'm Naruto Uzumaki. I like ramen, especially the kind that Iruka-sensei buys for me at Ichiraku. My hobby is training because I'm going to be the greatest Hokage any of you have ever seen. And then people will stop disrespecting me and treat me like I'm somebody important. I'll have to be vague. I don't have any other choice." Kakashi was nodding slowly. He folded his arms across his army green jonin vest. "All right then," he said. "Who's next?" How about Sakura Haruno? The girl who prefers wandering hallways to being in class." "Haha," she mumbled. Still unsure of how exactly she would go about this, Sakura opened her mouth and just let the words tumble out. "Yeah, I'm Sakura Haruno. My likes and dislikes. Well, I like sparring. And I hate, feeling inadequate. My hobby is sharpening my medical ninjutsu. I guess I have a dream, or a goal. And it's to keep the village safe. And to do that, I need to defeat a person who has taken someone important from me. So I need to get stronger." She drew a breath, slammed her mouth shut, and nodded curtly to indicate that she was finished. That was vague enough, right? Several long seconds of silence followed. Sakura felt all of their eyes on her and began doubting her resolve. Did she say something wrong? Did she expose too much? "You are so cool, Sakura-chan." Naruto breathed, his eyes wide. "Medical ninjutsu?" Kakashi questioned, eyebrows raised. "Oh. No genin fresh out of the academy should have the chakra control to practice medical ninjutsu. I picked up some skills in my spare time," was her lame cover-up. Kakashi responded. He was clearly unconvinced and Sakura had a feeling that he was saving his other follow-up questions for later. "Great. All right, next." Sasuke nodded. "Right. My name is Sasuke Uchiha. I dislike a lot of things and I don't particularly like anything. What I have is not a dream because I am going to make it a reality. I am going to avenge my clan by killing the man responsible for its demise. Another silence ensued. As usual, Naruto was the one to break it. He appeared to be consumed by a newfound whirl of emotions. RRGH. He groaned while standing up and turning to face his teammates. I can't believe this. I've got 2 Avengers on my team. Sakura's train of thought came to a sudden halt. An Avenger? Her? This doesn't make you cool, Sasuke. It was only cool when Sakura-chan said it, he added. The weight of Naruto's words was a lot to take in. Sakura had always pictured Avengers as being cold, self-isolated, and obsessed with revenge, likely because Sasuke had become something of an Avenger poster boy. But maybe there was more to it than that. Maybe it had more to do with this persistent restlessness, this constant urge to set objectives and do something before it was too late. Maybe it had more to do with how she knew she needed to stop Orochimaru from destroying the village. And her fear that she would never be strong enough to do so. Instinctively, Sakura's eyes sought out her Avenger teammate because maybe she was finally starting to get a proper sense of how it felt, of how he. She regretted the decision when she realized he was already staring at her. His expression was unreadable, however, his dark eyes held no traces of annoyance or condescending, as they often did in Sakura's former life. Not giving herself a moment to wallow in embarrassment, Sakura turned away. Kakashi went on with his opening speech about how 66% of all the academy graduates would be dropped from the program. He finished by warning them not to eat breakfast the following morning. Why? Naruto hollered. If you eat breakfast, you'll puke, Kakashi replied bluntly. After some parting words, he formed a few hand seals and disappeared in a burst of leaves. Naruto stomped off, infuriated that he was being restrained from enjoying his favorite part of the day besides lunch and dinner. Sakura resolved to squeeze in a few hours of training before she returned to her parents' house for dinner. She didn't have many weapons at her disposal, but what she really needed to work on was building her strength and testing the limits of her new, frail body. Sakura made a mental note to practice her chakra control and basic medical ninjutsu. After all, if she was going to impress the hospital workers enough to land a part-time job, she needed to ensure she had the skills to do so. Sakura. She was stopped in her tracks by a voice behind her. Sakura spun around to find Sasuke standing there with his arms crossed and his eyebrows furrowed. She struggled to hide her surprise. Sakura had once been so fixated on Sasuke's every move that there was no way he could have snuck up on her like this. Sasuke, she responded in a similar flat tone. He looked uncomfortable. Keep the village safe from what? He asked after a short pause. It took Sakura a moment to understand just what he was asking. Damn it. She needed to deflect the question. Isn't that a bit personal? I mean, I hardly know you. At least, that's what you're supposed to think. A muscle in his jaw twitched. Fine, Sasuke said, and averting his gaze. So I'm guessing you won't tell me who you want to defeat either? Sakura resisted the urge to smirk. Now that a potential murder is involved, Sasuke is interested in me. Go figure. If she was honest with herself. Sakura was definitely getting a kick out of leaving him dark as he had done to her on numerous occasions in her past life. This might not be the same Sasuke yet, but there was still some bitterness within her. She had loved him and he had known it. And that only made his betrayal and their attempts to kill each other that much harder to bear. She turned away, unable to look at him any longer. I don't have a reason to tell you anything, she said. But then she tried to lighten the atmosphere by adding, unless this is what you want for winning the bet. A moment passed. And then Sasuke said, no. I'll save that for later. Sakura frowned, and when she glanced over her shoulder again, he was gone. Chapter 4 Bell Test. Sakura was in pain all over. The muscles in her scrawny arms and legs ached as she dragged herself out of bed and into her bathroom. She'd spent the night at the training grounds and had focused on basic strength building exercises to get a feel for her muscular capacity. During her training, she had lifted and thrown several boulders and fallen trees, which, to her disappointment, proved to be extremely difficult feats now. She also noticed that those exercises had depleted her chakra so quickly that she couldn't have healed her sore muscles with medical ninjutsu even if she wanted to. Feeling disgruntled, Sakura got dressed and prepared her weapon holster for a day of training with her new team. Before she left, she spared a quick peek in her underwear drawer for the time travel scroll currently disguised as a pair of red panties. Upon spotting it, she felt a wave of reassurance. The scroll was still safe. Well, at least I seem to be doing something right so far. As she made her way to the training grounds, Sakura found herself consumed by thoughts of her mission. She hadn't sat down to formulate a plan yet. But what good would that do? Her body was weak. Her chakra reserve was significantly smaller than it used to be. What use would a plan be if she didn't have the ability to see it through? And what good would a plan be without realistic goals? Sakura had a lot of lofty goals for her new life, but how she was to achieve any of them was beyond her. She needed to prevent Orochimaru from launching a war on the village in almost 5 years from now. Also, she needed to stop Sasuke from betraying the village and joining forces with that corrupted snake. Because if she didn't, Sasuke himself would become as dangerous a threat to the Leaf Village. The most surefire way of achieving both of those things was to kill Orochimaru. The problem was that he was a twisted genius, a powerhouse, and was probably immortal. Okay. Sakura also couldn't overlook how much intel she had gained on the Akatsuki in her previous life, the evil organization of which villains like Sasuke's clan massacring brother were a part. But it wasn't like she could do anything about the Akatsuki on her own. Sakura's spirits were falling. Even at her full strength, Sakura knew she was an average ninja at best, save some exceptional skills in medical ninjutsu. But now she hardly even had those skills. So what was she to do? She noticed she had arrived at the designated meeting place, a tree-lined, grassy clearing in one of Konoha's training grounds. None of her teammates were in sight. Looks like I'm the first one here, Sakura thought while plopping herself down onto the cool, dewy grass. She rested her head in her hands. Well, in the short term, it was no question that she needed to build her strength. She needed to train. And if they were to ever be of use to her in the future, so did her teammates. Naruto and Sasuke arrived shortly after. The three of them exchanged tired nods, and Naruto, who looked exhausted, sat down next to Sakura and Sasuke stood somewhere off to the side. Sakura, who was the only one aware of Kakashi's tendency to be extremely late for everything, allowed her mind to continue puzzling over how she would go about completing her mission. After what felt like an hour of thinking, Sakura concluded that, for now, she would go with the flow. She didn't want to interfere with her teammates' skills development. In the meantime, she would train rigorously, redevelop her own skills, and gather as much information as she could from within the village before taking action. Taking action too soon, she figured, might cause more harm than good if it wasn't strategically planned and thoroughly researched. Sakura straightened up, feeling her first proper rush of relief since she'd traveled through time. Even though she still didn't have a plan for achieving anything tangible, at least she now knew how to justify her lack of action. Kakashi arrived 2 hours after Sakura first sat herself down on the grass. Sorry about that. A black cat crossed my path, so I had to take the long way, he drawled while feigning an innocent expression. What? There's no way that would make you this late. Naruto bellowed. Sakura sighed, having learned long ago that complaining about Kakashi's tardiness had absolutely no influence on it. Alright, let's get down to business, he said while ignoring Naruto's comment and extracting a few objects from his weapon pouch. He placed a clock on the tree stump behind him and pulled out a pair of gleaming, silver bells. That's right. The bell test. Struck by a wave of giddy nostalgia, Sakura realized that they were about to take Kakashi's signature test of teamwork, that was twisted and defied all logic but was pretty effective. The objective of the bell test is to steal these 2 bells from me before lunch. If you manage to take one successfully, I will provide you with lunch. If you don't, I'll tie you to one of these tree stumps so you can watch the other 2 while they eat. Any questions? Naruto apparently decided that now was the right time to strike. He ran forward and aimed a punch at Kakashi, who vanished and reappeared behind Naruto, pinning his hands behind his back. Easy Naruto, Kakashi said. I haven't even said go yet. You can use any means necessary, including your weapons. Okay, I've said enough. Go. The four of them scattered. Go with the flow, go with the flow. With much willpower, Sakura resisted the urge to interfere with her teammates, particularly Naruto's flawed battle tactics. She watched patiently from the bushes while said knucklehead launched an extremely obvious attack on Kakashi with his newly mastered shadow clone jutsu. She watched him endure Kakashi's 1,000 years of death technique, a swift, painful poke to where the light don't shine, and then fall for a booby trap, leaving him suspended from a tree branch by the ankles. Then she watched as Sasuke attacked Kakashi from the bushes with a barrage of shuriken, only to unveil that the Kakashi he attacked was a substitution, a log, to be precise, and now Sasuke had given away his position. Sasuke took off through the trees and Sakura detected that Kakashi was pursuing him. Once they were a safe distance away, she climbed out of the bushes and approached Naruto, who was still dangling from the tree. Sakura-chan! He exclaimed when he caught sight of her. Sakura pressed a finger to her lips. Shoo! Naruto, Kakashi-sensei could be hiding nearby, she hissed, though she knew their sensei was long gone in pursuit of their teammate. Honestly, she just wanted Naruto to take it down a couple of notches. Oh! Naruto gasped, also pressing a finger to his lips and nodding vigorously. Sakura snapped the rope just above his ankles with her kunai, sending him plummeting towards the ground, and he braced the fall with a clumsy roll. While Naruto was untangling his legs from the rope, Sakura collected her knife and the weapons lodged in the log Kakashi had used in his substitution. Until she had enough money to afford an adequate supply of weapons for herself, she needed to salvage whatever she could find. Thanks for saving me, Sakura-chan, Naruto whispered, grinning. So how about me and you get ourselves bells together? We can team up on Sasuke. Sakura smirked. Yeah, let's work together, she agreed, impressed that Naruto was actually proposing teamwork. But Sakura knew that the only way Kakashi would let them pass the test was if all three members of Team 7 worked together. But I think we need to work with Sasuke too. Kakashi-sensei is way out of our league, so we'll need all the help we can get. Naruto glowered at her. Sakura-chan, Kakashi only has 2 bells. One of us has to lose. And I am not teaming up with that bastard. Or losing, he spat while crossing his arms stubbornly. Sakura sighed. He was right, of course. Kakashi arranged the exercise in such a way that they would think they were competing with each other, when in truth, competing would only guarantee them failure. But how would she ever explain that to Naruto? Look Naruto, maybe this test isn't about what meets the eye, she tried. No. Naruto yelled, seeming to forget about the whispering. If you want to work with Sasuke, count me out. I'll find Kakashi and take him on myself. And with that, he created a couple of shadow clones and took off after their sensei, emitting a loud battle cry. Sakura clenched her teeth. That stubborn idiot. He was going to cause the team to fail this test again. But what could I even do to change that? Sakura reminded herself that Naruto would mature with time, a lot of time, and that his childish self-centeredness wouldn't be cured in a day. Things would improve. She just needed to be patient. Go with the flow. She ventured through the trees at a light jog in search of the others and soon sensed Kakashi's chakra approaching from behind her. She continued to run, pretending she hadn't noticed him, while gathering chakra to her hand. When she felt that he was at a close enough range, she swung around, and in one fluid motion, struck the ground with her fist. The earth around it was blasted into pieces. It was nowhere near as powerful a feat as she was once capable of, but it seemed to do the job. Kakashi sprang out from his hiding place. Impressive, he said, and landing a few meters away. You've forced me out into the open. That technique requires advanced chakra control, he added with a curious stare and then disappearing through the nearby trees. Thanks, she answered uncertainly and bracing for his counterattack. But Kakashi didn't reappear. Sakura spun around and noticed that his chakra was fading out of her sensory range. What's he up to? She wondered while cautiously returning to her original path into the forest. Did he really give up on me that quickly? That was when she heard a gut-wrenching cry from somewhere ahead of her. Sakura's heart sank. That voice. Her legs propelled her into the brush and moments later, there he was. On the edge of a small clearing, Sasuke's body was hunched over in a crumpled mess, propped against a tree trunk for support, and the grass below him was stained crimson. The sight was paralyzing. Weapons protruded from all of his limbs. His left forearm had been severed clean from his body, leaving a trembling, bleeding stump behind. There were deep slashes across his face from which blood oozed and dribbled down to his chin. Sakura, he said weakly and visibly struggling to lift his head. Help me. His pleading, bloodshot eyes met hers. Sakura's stomach churned. How could this have happened? This had to be a dream. A nightmare. This had to be Genjutsu. Sakura snatched the kunai from her weapon pouch and, without a second thought, fired it straight between Sasuke's eyes. Thunk. He disappeared in a cloud of smoke and the knife struck the tree behind him. Damn, Kakashi-sensei's skills in Genjutsu are good. Even though she saw through it in a matter of seconds, the technique sure did give her a fright. Did he really use that same illusion on her former self? Sakura could hardly remember it happening. She probably passed out. After retrieving her kunai from the tree, Sakura resumed jogging through the forest and soon arrived at a clearing. It was filled with remnants of a battle, weapons were scattered around and embedded in trees, small craters had formed in the ground, and the bushes and trees on the outskirts of the clearing were singed black. Sasuke, the fire-breathing member of the team, must have been here. Sakura? She jumped and spun towards the source of Sasuke's voice. Again? But he wasn't there. At least, that was what she thought until her eyes drifted lower and found Sasuke's head at her feet, protruding from the ground. Still feeling jumpy from Kakashi's genjutsu, she leaped back and drew a weapon. But after a brief assessment of the predicament, his grumpy expression and all, she concluded that this time it wasn't genjutsu. The scene was also distantly familiar. What happened? She asked, and fighting an untimely urge to snigger. Seeing a head sticking out of the ground wasn't an easy sight to digest. Especially the head of the almighty Sasuke Uchiha. Kakashi used an earth-style attack called Headhunter Jutsu, he explained, glowering. He attacked me from underground and pulled me down with him. Nice, Kakashi-sensei, Sakura breathed thoughtfully, to which Sasuke shot her an irritated look. Was that out loud? I mean, let's get you out of here, she corrected, a fake smile dancing on her lips. How? He asked skeptically. I can move the earth around you, she answered simply. Sasuke's eyebrows rose. But I only have experience with shattering the ground with a lot of force to throw enemies off. I've never actually done this in a controlled manner. She inspected the earth around him and lowered to a crouch. If she really screwed this up, Sasuke could get blown to bits. But in her body's current form, she reasoned, she probably didn't have the strength to cause much damage anyways. Sakura gathered a generous pulse of chakra to her hand. Sasuke stared at it in disbelief. Can I try this? She asked him seriously. Sure, he said, still looking skeptical. Sakura placed her palm on the ground about a foot away from her teammate's head and instantly, with a resounding crack, the ground crumbled beneath her hand as if it were as shapeless as sand. Whoa! Sasuke gasped as the earth broke into pieces around him. He managed to pull himself out and scramble backwards just as the hole began to cave in on itself. Sakura pulled her arm back and grabbed onto it with the other hand in attempt to control its sudden trembling. I'm weak, she thought in horror as her chakra reserves rapidly slipped and her vision grew bleary. Her new body was utterly pathetic with how her scrawny limbs were too frail to handle immense concentrations of chakra. She needed to train. She needed to get stronger. And fast. how did you do that? Sakura's head jerked up. She'd nearly forgotten Sasuke was there. He was standing across from the enormous hole in the ground, gaping down at the dirt-filled, meter-wide opening. But instead of answering, Sakura's medical ninja instincts pulled her focus to the bloody gash below her teammate's knee. Ignoring his question, she asked, "Did I just injure you?" While nodding in the direction of his leg. It seemed to take Sasuke a moment to figure out what she was referring to. "Oh," he said, and glancing down with a shrug. "Yeah, I guess. But how did you do that?" He repeated, traces of annoyance appearing in his tone for being so blatantly ignored. "Damn it!" Sakura cried. "This is just embarrassing." As a ninja who prided in her abilities to control her chakra and perform intricate medical procedures, accidentally injuring the very person she was trying to save was not a good look. She leaped across the hole and crouched down to inspect Sasuke's leg from up close. "Sit," she ordered, her commanding doctor demeanor whirring to life. Taken aback by her authoritative tone, he growled, "I'm not hurt. Leave it alone." He was growing increasingly agitated, likely because his earlier question was still being ignored. "I don't care," she snapped. "I shouldn't have made this mistake. But I can heal you." Sasuke took pause. "Heal me?" he repeated. This notion seemed to catch his interest enough for him to finally obey and lower himself onto the grass. "All right." Sakura raised her hand and closed her eyes to focus. This would be her first time practicing medical ninjutsu since she traveled through time. Would she even be able to do it? She knew what to do, but could her body keep up? There was only one way to find out. She gathered chakra to her hand, but to her dismay, the chakra glowed blue, a sign that it was charged with lethal energy. No. Her only superior ability, there was no way she'd lost it too. With a cry of frustration, Sakura doubled the amount of chakra in her hand and used every ounce of strength she could forge to transform the chakra into the soothing, healing substance she needed. And after the longest, most excruciating minute Sakura had possibly ever endured, the chakra shifted in hue to a rich, swirling green. "Aha!" she exclaimed, impressing her hand to Sasuke's leg. She closed her eyes and carefully manipulated how the chakra coursed through his limb. Apply pressure around the cut. Repair damaged blood capillaries. Seal the broken skin. And when Sakura pulled her hand away, his leg was completely healed. Great. Sakura Haruno, who was once the second most advanced medical ninja in all of Konoha, and arguably in the entire ninja world, was now barely capable of one of the most basic procedures in medical ninjutsu. Just bloody fantastic. "There," she said dismissively and standing again. "Now what?" The bell test suddenly felt rather pointless. Sakura needed to focus on getting this pathetic body of hers up to speed. Tsunade would have known what to do, Sakura thought with a pang of loneliness. Sasuke's eyes bore into hers, and Sakura's stomach churned uncomfortably. How the hell was it that he still read her like a book? Even now that she was from an entirely different universe? "I don't know," she answered truthfully and turning away to avoid his scrutinizing gaze. Then, before she could stop herself, Sakura added, "Something happened to me recently. I got weaker. I lost some of my abilities. So I'm also trying to find out what I'm capable of." Was that too much? It was far too easy to confide in Sasuke. Dangerously easy. At this rate, she might totally give herself away. But, it was nice to have someone to open up to, however slightly. "Train with me." Sakura glanced over her shoulder, her mouth hanging open. "Help me with chakra control." "I'll help you with strength," he added seriously, like he was challenging her to refuse his offer. Train with Sasuke? Was that a smart move? Well, he was the best graduate in their year with one of the most versatile skill sets Sakura had ever seen. It would also be nice to spend her personal training hours doing something other than tossing boulders around. And also, if I say yes, can I use your weapons? Sasuke rolled his eyes. Whatever. Bring. Damn it. That was the alarm, Sasuke groaned and stalking off in the direction of the ringing. I've wasted too much time here. And with that, he made his way back towards the tree stumps where Kakashi would be distributing lunches to his students with bells. The following sequence of events were very familiar to Sakura. By the time she and Sasuke regrouped with their team, Kakashi had already tied Naruto to a tree stump for trying to steal the lunches. He lectured them on how the objective of the exercise was to work as a team and that they had one more chance to pass the bell test, allowing Sasuke and Sakura to eat the lunches in front of Naruto. Once he left, Sasuke and Sakura shared their lunches with their poor, starving teammate, and upon Kakashi's return, he announced that they'd passed for prioritizing camaraderie over the rules. Sakura had to admit that Kakashi's teaching methods were a little bizarre, but at least his heart was in the right place. I'm a ninja. Woohoo! Naruto exclaimed while wriggling against the ropes binding him to the tree stump. Kakashi smiled from somewhere under his mask. Well done, Team 7. Our first formal training session will take place tomorrow, he said, and flashing them all a thumbs up. Then he started his walk back to the village's core, ignoring Naruto's yells about how he was still tied up. And as he passed by her, Sasuke mumbled, "And for us, tonight." Chapter 5 Gravity. Sakura? What are you doing here? Oh, just thought I would pay you a visit. Sakura found herself in the Yamanaka flower shop on her way home from training, the shop that Ino's family owned and that her best friend worked part-time at. Something about their unfamiliarly bitter interactions the previous day wasn't sitting right with Sakura. She missed her friend, even though she wasn't her friend yet. Ino strode out from behind the counter and placed a hand on her hip, her long, blonde hair draping over her shoulder. You never come in just to visit, she said, and eyeing Sakura suspiciously. What are you really here for? Sakura racked her brain for a lie. Of course, she could have easily said she wanted to buy some flowers, but instead what came out of her mouth was, to catch up. Huh? Ino sneered. Her piercing, blue eyes danced over Sakura's face like she was trying to uncover an ulterior motive. After a moment, Ino jutted out her lip and untied her apron. You can come to the back room. But not for long. She beckoned for Sakura to follow her. Once they were in the privacy of the storage room behind the counter, Ino went to the miniature fridge and pulled out a pair of cold beverages while Sakura's eyes wandered around the room. Locked cabinets and miniature greenhouses lined the walls. So, what's new? She asked absently and ignoring Ino's reproachful glance. The blonde cleared her throat and sat down on one of the blue fold-out chairs. Not much, I guess, she said. And then, Shikamaru could be cute if he wasn't such a lazy jerk. And don't get me started on Choji. Sakura opened her mouth and closed it again. Boys. Of course. Ino continued gabbing away while Sakura nodded along, but girl talk just didn't have the same appeal it used to have. Anyways, it could be worse, Ino said. Naruto could be on my team. She grinned smugly like she had won something while Sakura lowered herself onto the other chair. Sakura figured it would only make sense to agree. Yeah, Sakura said with a chuckle. He's pretty annoying. That's an understatement, Ino said, and raising her eyebrows. But I guess it's the price you pay for getting to see Sasuke every day, you lucky thing. Ino's eyes proceeded to glaze over and, as Sakura anticipated, her spiel about how easy on the eyes Sakura's dark-haired teammate was began. Meanwhile, Sakura's eyes started wandering again. Until they locked on a shelf labeled herbs. Herbs. That was it. And I bet he secretly loves the attention. He's just a shy type, am I right? Right, Sakura piped up, a little dismissively, and then, hey, sorry to change the subject, but how much does a set of medical herbs cost? Ino's lips quirked. Why? She asked, visibly baffled. I want to collect them, Sakura replied hesitantly. And it would be a great help if you could hook me up with a basic set. Ino shot her a suspicious look but eventually said, I can probably throw something together for you. Sakura's heart leapt. Now she was getting somewhere. With only a few more supplies, she could start crafting her own ointments. Realizing that the only way to secure this deal was if she was on Ino's good side, with a sudden rush of adrenaline, Sakura said, "That would be great, pig." "So, did any of the other rookies catch your eye?" Ino paused and then smirked. The two girls spent the next half hour chatting about movies, boys, who liked who, and organic skin products. Despite the conversation having no immediate relevance to Sakura's life and goals, she reasoned that it wasn't a total waste of time if their friendship needed rekindling. Besides, allowing herself to become a little absorbed in mindless conversation was kind of refreshing. As dinner time approached, she bid Ino farewell, after persuading her to toss some poisonous plants into her new package of herbs. "Now I can embed poison into my weapons." "Perfect." "That was nice," Ino said with a small, snarky smile as Sakura collected her new things. "It was," Sakura agreed, smiling up at the blonde. She was surprised that approaching Ino kindly was all it took for some kind of bond to foster. Was it really Sakura's own fault that their friendship was basically non-existent in her former life as a young teenager? If all she had to do was drop the competitiveness and play nice, maybe maintaining this friendship wouldn't be hard after all. Well, regardless of how hard it was, she at least had to try. She wanted those herbs. As Sakura turned to leave, Ino called after her, "You still like him, right?" Sakura paused at the doorway. That old rivalry over Sasuke's attention seemed so trivial after everything that had happened in her past life. Ino, and just about everyone else's, shallow, surface-level attraction had ebbed away when Sasuke turned criminal. Sakura's heart, on the other hand, had carried her down a different path. But for now this rivalry was just harmless fun, right? It was a game, really, and some part of Sakura sensed that Ino liked it. Surely they could maintain some sort of friendship with a common object of affection. At least, Sakura hoped so. Of course, she replied with a small grin and hoping she had assumed correctly. She was just starting to second-guess her resolve when Ino grinned back. "Good. It's no fun if you don't." When Sakura walked through the front door of her parents' house, her mother informed her that there was a missed call from the hospital. She excitedly retuned the call and discovered that a doctor had a volunteer opportunity to offer her. She arranged to drop by for her first shift the following day after training with her team. Thrilled, she wolfed down her dinner, helped her parents tidy up the kitchen, and departed to her room to inspect her new stash of medical supplies. At 8 o'clock, she packed up her training gear and a water bottle, and slipped out the front door to the training grounds. Sasuke had never specified when or where exactly he wanted to meet her, but that didn't matter. She was planning to train regardless of whether he was there. When she arrived at the grounds, to her surprise, it was not Sasuke but Naruto who she found. Tied to a tree stump. "Naruto?" she asked as she approached him. She'd totally forgotten about leaving him behind after the bell test. "How did he get out of this in my old life?" "Sakura-chan," he replied weakly. "I'm so hungry." She sliced the ropes with her kunai. "Kakashi-sensei tied you up real good, huh, Naruto?" she asked with a small laugh. But Naruto didn't respond. "Ramen. Need ramen," he chanted while stumbling to his feet and making a beeline towards the core of the village, specifically, to his favorite ramen restaurant. Sakura watched his retreating figure until he was out of sight. The poor guy could really use some extra training in the escape arts. "Okay, let's go," said a new voice. Sakura spun around and brandished a kunai before her. Sasuke, clad in his training gear and bearing a signature frown, glanced at the kunai and raised his eyebrows. "You need to work on your reflexes," he noted. "Oh. Sorry," she said and hastily shoving the knife back in its holster. "I didn't know you were here." "I've been here for a while," he said while crouching down to open and empty his backpack. "And why didn't you free Naruto from the stump?" Sakura asked, feigning an accusatory tone. "Why would I do that?" he answered absently without looking up. Sakura rolled her eyes and lowered to a squat to examine Sasuke's stash of weapons. Among the shuriken and kunai were long senbon needles, a few daggers, a couple of demon wind shuriken, a bow, and several arrows. This is great, she mumbled and staring longingly at the shining metal objects like a kid in a candy store. I don't have many of my own to offer, she added sheepishly and emptying her tiny holster of shuriken and kunai onto the ground. That's fine, Sasuke said dismissively. Let's warm up. Sure. She stood. I usually start with a lap around the village, Sakura said before she could think better of it. But can my body really handle that kind of distance in this pathetic state? Well, based on what she'd observed of her skills that day, probably not. But, how about a shorter route today? She offered with a weak smile. Sasuke shrugged. Whatever, he said while turning on his heel then running towards the trees. She followed suit and soon they were leaping through the branches, using chakra to propel themselves through the forest. It was growing dark and the air was cool and crisp in the shade of the trees. Sakura felt a rush of adrenaline rise in her chest. The sensation was amazing. It was a peaceful state to be in with her mind only focused on her pumping legs, the trees, the wind rushing past her ears, and Sasuke's back, which was bobbing in and out of sight ahead of her. They made it around a quarter of the village and then turned back without saying a word to each other. When they returned to the clearing, Sakura's untrained lungs and muscles were aching. She bent over, resting her hands on her knees, and struggled to catch her breath. Sorry. Sasuke, she panted. My body is so weak. She reached for her water and took a generous gulp. I hope I have enough chakra left to train effectively. Well, if you want to build up a substantial reserve of chakra, you have to expel it frequently, Sasuke explained and also pausing for a drink. He didn't look half as tired as she suspected she did. Aside from the sparse beads of sweat on his brow and the slight rise and fall in his chest, he seemed as composed as he always did. The more chakra you use, the more chakra your body will produce. Right, she replied and forcing herself upright, and making a mental note that she would start hopping from rooftop to rooftop through the village when she ran errands. So, what now? Next they practiced throwing weapons at a set of targets Sasuke fastened to the row of tree trunks. As expected, he threw his knives and shuriken with flawless accuracy, but Sakura's abilities lagged behind. She started off standing too far from the trunks, overestimating the strength of her arms. Her weapon struck the wood below the target. Your stance is fine, Sasuke observed while he took aim for another target. Sakura hadn't realized he'd been watching her. The problem is my strength, she cut in, glowering. I've realized. They threw weapons for about an hour, alternating between hitting the tree trunks from varying distances and throwing each other aerial targets. Sakura started to adjust to her new body and her accuracy improved immensely by the end of the hour. But her abilities still fell short of the Uchiha prodigies, considerably so. Alright, I want to show you something, Sakura said while rooting through the weapons from the ground around her feet. Come here. Sasuke glanced up from where he stood by the targets, seemingly taken aback by her commanding tone. He approached her curiously with his hands in his pockets. Sakura picked up a shuriken and placed it flat on her palm. We're doing chakra control training. Here's a little trick my mentor taught me. Then she sent a steady stream of chakra to her hand, and once she was certain the pressure was just right, flipped her hand over. The shuriken stuck. Sasuke watched carefully. You need to exert just the right amount, Sakura explained. Too weak a hold and the shuriken will fall. Too strong a hold and you could pull the shuriken right into your hand. So be careful, she added. Some people start with harmless objects like cloth or fabric, but I find the learning curve is usually steeper when there is a risk of injury. She tossed the shuriken to her teammate. Wordlessly, he did as he was instructed and placed the weapon on his palm and closed his eyes in concentration. When he flipped his hand around, he winced and jumped back. The shuriken dropped to the ground. Too strong, he mumbled while lowering onto the grass, crossing his legs, and retrieving the shuriken. Sasuke's brows were furrowed and he had a stubborn look in his eye. He tried again, but his hold was too weak and the shuriken found its way back to the ground. Sakura sat next to him and coached Sasuke through the technique until, 30 minutes later, he managed to get the shuriken to stick for a total of 6 seconds. Good, she said encouragingly. Once you get the hang of it, the rest will come easily. Watch this. She brought a pointed end of the shuriken to the tip of her nose and closed her eyes. Then she retracted her hands, allowing it dangle there. He raised his eyebrows and nodded, impressed. This is a good exercise, he said. I need to work on it. I'm glad I've contributed something useful, she mumbled with a shrug and doing everything in her power to not appear too pleased. She was struggling to grasp that she was better at something than the great Sasuke Uchiha. Okay, now it's your turn to help me with strength training. Just let me heal the cuts in your hand first. Sasuke's eyes flickered in her direction. He remained silent but didn't resist when she took his hand and pumped chakra into the scabs created by the shuriken. He watched the procedure intently, his eyes trained on her green chakra. And Sakura was relieved to find that conjuring her medical chakra was a little easier this time around. That skill took a long time to master, I'm guessing, he said while nodding towards her glowing hands. Years, she answered proudly. He shot her a questioning stare but didn't probe any further. Next they worked on basic strength training from push-ups to lifting and tossing boulders and uprooted trees. It was at this point that Sakura began to feel exhausted. Her scrawny limbs were shaking after only 20 minutes of their strength exercises. She would have dropped a tree on herself, in fact, if Sasuke hadn't caught it in the nick of time. Alright, don't hurt yourself, he said while setting it down. We should call it a night. Sakura helped Sasuke gather his weapons and targets. Her arms were still trembling. Sasuke apparently noticed. Why don't you heal yourself? He asked without sparing her a glance. I don't want to interfere with my natural muscle development, she said, shrugging. And I don't like to waste chakra on myself unless I really have to. He turned and watched her pack the bag without responding. When she finished up, she faced him. Well, thank you for inviting me out, Sakura said with a polite nod. He returned the nod. I'll continue doing that chakra control exercise tonight. I'll have it mastered for tomorrow. Sakura raised her eyebrows. What's tomorrow? Let's train again, was his curt reply. Same time. Sakura tilted her head to the side and smirked. He noticed her expression and averted his gaze, a dusting of color appearing on his face. And that was all it took. What happened next was entirely out of Sakura's control. Her stomach flipped. Her heart began to thud. A mixture of nervousness and excitement filled her chest. Because there was something about that familiar expression on Sasuke's face that filled her mind with emotions and memories. It dawned on her that Sasuke, the village traitor and power-hungry villain, was not the boy in front of her. No, this boy was her overprotective, mysterious, and quirky teammate. The boy who she once knew like the back of her hand and who, once upon a time, was her protector and dear friend. What? He asked, snapping her out of her trance. Sakura blinked and felt her face grow hot. I was thinking about how I'm going to extract poison from my herbs, she lied quickly. Sasuke gave her a quizzical look, prompting her to elaborate. He was clearly oblivious to her emotional turmoil. I'm going to embed some of my weapons with poison tonight. Oh, he said. A moderately awkward moment of silence passed before he added, well, see you in the morning. Yeah, see you. They both took off towards their respective homes. Meanwhile, Sakura's mind was racing. She was beginning to doubt if spending so much time with her dark-haired teammate was such a good idea anymore. Because with how smitten she knew she was capable of becoming, his presence might distract her from the important things. Falling uncontrollably head over heels for anyone would do her no good. Just look at where that got me last time. Despite Sakura's best efforts, however, she did see a lot of Sasuke in the coming days. And she saw very little of her pillow. She spent her nights sorting through her collection of plants and researching the simplest practices for extracting chemicals from them. She started compiling a list of errands to run at the flower shop and embedded 3 kunai with poison. Also, Team 7 took on their first D-rank missions. Naruto was enthralled until he realized that the missions consisted of catching stray animals, babysitting, and manual labor. Sakura wasn't particularly let down by the slow pace of these missions because she had known from the start that D ranks were just chores. But as the days went on, she started to feel a little anxious. Because the time she spent with her team became a complete waste. D-ranked missions served to cultivate a sense of duty and self-discipline in young ninjas, and the only one on the team who really needed help with that was Naruto. And Sakura's volunteer work at the hospital ended up being far less thrilling than she had hoped for. On her first day, she filed paperwork, then cleaned beakers and test tubes in the lab. She didn't even have any opportunities to witness medical practices, let alone see any of the patients. But regardless of her initial disappointment, she showed up at the hospital every day after training with Team 7. Because even if it was just grunt work, it was the single connection she had with the hospital. The only part of her days that Sakura actually found productive was her after-hours training with Sasuke. His chakra control was improving immensely. He mastered sticking flat objects to his hands by the second night of training, and he was able to stick shuriken to his arms and legs by the third night. Excellent, Sakura said. Next week we'll start working with the long needles. Using the sharp ends. And he seemed quite determined to rise to that challenge. Sasuke let slip that he was staying up for nearly the entire nights practicing the techniques she showed him. She believed it, considering the rate he was improving. Sakura noticed a little improvement in her strength training too. Her ever-increasing fatigue was slowing down her progress, but her chakra depleted at a slower rate with each new exercise, and she was starting to develop calluses on her hands and feet. But after nearly a week, was Sakura used to this new life? No. Not at all. It was all still very surreal. She felt like she was living in a prolonged dream that would soon come to an end. Team 7 met every day at the training grounds and embarked on mindless missions together. In her old life, Sakura would have given anything to relive these days. But not now. Not now that she had the burden of saving the world as she knew it resting on her shoulders. Naruto was his young and foolish self. He hadn't tapped into the nine-tailed fox's power yet, and he never failed to make Sakura smile at least 5 times and injure himself at least 6 times on each mission. Sakura was also struck by how different her sensei was. Kakashi appeared blissful and calm for the most part, consistently showing up late for their team meetings, and frequently caught reading his little orange make-out paradise book. And Sakura would have cherished spending so much time alone with Sasuke in her past life. But instead, she spent the entirety of their one-on-one training sessions trying to shut out any thoughts unrelated to building up her abilities. She also spent a lot of time hating how weak and tired she was and pushing and fighting her physical limitations. But after numerous consecutive days of training with Sasuke on no sleep, she reached a breaking point. Sakura could barely throw a kunai straight by the end of the session. She cried out in frustration and collapsed onto the ground. She missed her old body and desperately needed to do something. Do something productive with her life. But what could she do without any strength? That was when she was lifted into the air. Whoa, what are you doing? Sakura stammered with surprise when she processed that Sasuke was pulling her up by her arms. You need to stop, he said, and setting her on her feet. You're going to hurt yourself. He was right. Of course he was right. But Sakura refused to believe it. Then, before she could stop herself, the words were tumbling out of her mouth. You wouldn't understand. You've never been as weak as I am, lagging behind everyone. I'm not as good as you, but I have to get stronger. Strong enough to complete my mission. I need to stop him. Sasuke didn't answer and turned away to pack up the bag with their training supplies. Sakura placed her hand on the tree stump beside her to steady her wobbly legs. It was then she noticed the stabbing pains in her ankles and calves. She had pulled and torn muscles. Tears welled up in her eyes for the first time in what felt like years. She was getting discouraged. Barely a week had passed and this life was already unbearable. Constant confusion, stress, isolation. She then realized that Sasuke was hooking the straps of the backpack around her arms, but her mind was so clouded that she couldn't find the words to ask him why. She was too focused on stopping the tears resting in her lower eyelids from spilling down her face. Next thing she knew, Sasuke was hoisting her onto his back. Sakura emitted a gasp and flailed her arms to gain her balance before gripping onto his shirt. "You're done for today," he said curtly as he straightened up and started carrying her away to the village core. Finally giving in, Sakura let herself slump onto his shoulders. A break would probably do her body some good, and Sakura knew that more than anyone given her medical expertise. But her stubbornness had been keeping her from acknowledging it. "And tomorrow," Sasuke continued as he made his way down the dirt road, "we'll take the night off." "Okay," Sakura said weakly with a soft sigh. She was too tired to say anything else. Several minutes passed in silence. Then they reached the main road. "And stop acting like I don't understand you." Sasuke's comment pulled Sakura out of her slumber. "What? You aren't the only one here who has lost everything. Did I touch a sore spot?" It hadn't occurred to Sakura that she might have said something to offend her teammate. She hadn't been filtering her words or considering what they implied. And nothing could have prepared her for what Sasuke said next. His back tensed and his grip on her calves tightened a little. "In case you haven't heard, there was a massacre in our village years ago. My brother lost his mind and murdered every member of the Uchiha clan. Except for me." Sakura's breath caught in her throat. "I lost everything," Sasuke hissed, the deep-seated emotion seeping through his words. "I saw him kill my parents. Over and over again in his genjutsu. Seeing that did something to me and I can't stop thinking about it. And now, the only thing that keeps me going is my hatred for him. And the hope that one day he will be dead by my hand." Sasuke paused, perhaps realizing that he was venting. Sakura didn't know how to respond. She was caught off guard by how readily he was opening up to her. "Compared to him, I'm nothing. I wasn't able to save my parents. And I won't rest until I've avenged them. You might not see me as weak, but that's how I see myself. So I don't think we're that different." They were now at the walkway leading to Sakura's house. Sasuke hesitated for a moment before setting her down and stepping away. Sakura also took a step back and observed her teammate. There was something vulnerable written in his features, something that she had only ever seen on rare occasions in her past life. Now that she had a clear view of him in the moonlight, Sakura noticed how his chest was rising and falling with each breath and his jaw was clenched. He was determinedly glaring away from her with frown lines creased between his eyebrows. Sakura's worries over the time travel mission melted away. A new pain, a pain that could not be healed with medical ninjutsu, rose in her. "I'm sorry," she said quietly, unsure of what to say. She needed to tread carefully. "I already knew about your clan, Sasuke. I'm sorry. I was caught up in my frustration and, the words just spilled out." She took off the backpack and held it in front of her while staring down at her feet. It took Sasuke a moment to register that she was returning his bag. He slowly took hold of the handle, his mind clearly elsewhere. "It's fine. I've been there," he finally said in a dismissive tone. Sakura looked up and met his gaze to find that the vulnerable traces she saw before were gone. "All right," he said, and slinging the bag over his shoulder. "You should sleep tonight. No plants." He turned away and started walking back towards the main road. "You'll be no help to me if you burn yourself out," he added over his shoulder before he picked up his pace. Sakura was left smiling helplessly at his retreating figure as Sasuke trekked into the darkness towards his own empty house. Her legs were still wobbling, but she wasn't so sure that had to do with her damaged muscles anymore. He disappeared into the night, leaving the image of the Uchiha crest on his back imprinted in her mind. Chapter 6 Suspicions. Ouch! Naruto was howling from where he was crouched by the river. The empty soda can he'd been holding dropped into the rushing current with a splash and he was clutching his hand. What did you do, Naruto? Sakura asked slowly, wondering if he was actually complaining about something worth noting this time. But then she spotted the blood spilling from a deep gash on his palm. Well. It appears he's causing a scene for a reason for once. The kin cut me. He cried and staring at Sakura with wide, emotion-filled eyes. Of course it did, she said, and taking his hand to pump her green chakra into the open wound. The skin started repairing itself immediately. One of the few advantages of having a young teenage Naruto on her team was that she got plenty of medical ninjutsu practice in. Kakashi had announced earlier that morning that they were assigned the mission of cleaning the trash out of the river that ran along the south side of the village. So far, Naruto had fallen in the river twice, dropped his wallet once, and now, injured himself with a piece of garbage. What's going on over here? Kakashi, who had just jogged over from his position down the river, asked. His eyes landed on the green glow surrounding their hands. Ah, I see. Our team's medical ninja saves the day again. Naruto, how is it that you've managed to hurt yourself 7 times on only 5D ranked missions? Because it's always so unfair, Naruto wailed. I mean, look at how fast the current is where I'm working. How come pretty boy always gets it easy? The water over there is the calmest. Instinctively, the three of them glanced to where Sasuke was tying up an enormous bag of garbage about 100 meters away. Sensing their stares, he looked up and started making his way towards them. Kakashi sighed. Naruto was such a handful. Maybe it's because I'm giving you a more advanced challenge to, help you improve your skills. Naruto gazed up at him and a mischievous grin slowly spread across his face. Oh yeah? You're challenging me more because I have more potential than Sasuke does, right sensei? Your skills as a garbage collector are impressive, Naruto, said Sasuke, now arriving at Naruto's designated trash collecting zone. They put your taijutsu to shame. Why you? Naruto growled and balling his freshly healed hand into a fist. Whoa, Naruto. Take it easy or you might reopen the cut, Sakura hissed and pushing his hand down. No, Sakura-chan. I've put up with enough from that bastard. I've had it with him. And I've had it with D-ranked missions. Ignoring Naruto's first comment, Sasuke added, he has a point. When are we going on a real mission? Kakashi heaved a lengthy sigh. When I feel your teamwork skills are substantial, I'll do what I can to sign us up for a C-ranked mission. Sakura glanced at the two boys who were now glowering at each other. At this rate, it was quite evident that they weren't going on a C-ranked mission for a while. Anyways, I think we can call it a day. We've been fairly productive for the past 3 hours. And don't forget that I'm giving you all the weekend off. Naruto whooped and Sakura felt a tinge of relief. It had been a long, mind-numbing morning. Great! Time for some ramen. Naruto exclaimed. Want to join me, Sakura-chan? He added, as he had asked after each mission that week. Sakura shook her head. Sorry, Naruto. I volunteer at the hospital every day after our missions, remember? She answered. As she had each time he asked. Oh yeah. I forgot. And with that, he took off into village. Sasuke also picked up his bag and turned to leave. Just as he was springing into the air, Sakura was sure she caught sight of a shuriken stuck to his arm under the sleeve of his blue t-shirt. Sakura, Kakashi said once the others were well out of earshot. Do you mind if we talk for a moment? Uh-oh. Sakura had known it was only a matter of time before Kakashi cornered her like this. Sure, sensei, she said uncertainly while packing up her bag. He stood in front of her and folded his arms. It's nice to see you volunteering at the hospital. I didn't realize I was getting a student with such a rich medical background on my team. Here we go, Sakura thought with a wince. So. How did you learn medical ninjutsu? He asked. Sakura had known those words were coming. But she couldn't help panicking now that she was finally hearing them. I have a natural aptitude, I guess. I taught myself, she answered lamely, trying out the same excuse she gave to Sasuke. It clearly didn't convince Kakashi, however, because next he asked, who did you train under? I didn't train under anyone, she lied. Sakura knew she wasn't fooling him, but she simply couldn't admit that she had trained under Tsunade. In this world, Tsunade didn't even know her yet. If Sakura went around claiming she was the legendary Sannin's apprentice, it would surely cause some serious confusion down the road. Kakashi's expression didn't change, his visible dark eye surveying her carefully. All right, he said. Your style reminds me of someone I know. So I was curious. Sakura exhaled with relief at his dismissive tone. Did she really manage to get herself out of this conversation so easily? Of course, sensei, she replied before slinging her bag over her shoulder. You aren't from here, are you? Sakura froze in her tracks. What did he mean by that? I was born and raised in Konoha, she answered honestly before turning away and approaching the path that led into the village. That doesn't necessarily answer my question. Sakura picked up her pace, her heart racing. I have no idea what you mean, sensei. She called over her shoulder. Sorry, but I'm going to be late for my volunteer shift. See you later. She started running and didn't dare look back. Yes, her current behavior probably wasn't helping with how suspicious she might have seemed. But she needed to get away from this situation and fast. What was Kakashi getting at? Did she do something to give herself away? Or did he find the scroll? No, she reminded herself. The scroll is safely tucked away in my underwear drawer disguised as a pair of red underwear. Kakashi would never think to look in there. But it couldn't hurt to check. Just in case. As time went on, Sakura's concerns over the safety of the time travel scroll became more intrusive. She struggled to focus on the heap of documents cradled in her arms, the medical records she had been assigned to file. She desperately needed to get home and check on the scroll. Her mind was so distracted, in fact, that she accidentally dropped the entire stack of papers onto the floor. Grumbling, she kneeled down to pick up the scattered records. Sakura? Said a voice. She glanced up and noticed that the receptionist, a middle-aged woman with a black bob cut, was now standing before her. I think you should take the rest of the day off, the woman said seriously and eyeing the papers Sakura had dropped. With a pang of embarrassment, Sakura straightened up and said, No, I'll stay. It's only 30 minutes into my shift. I promise it won't happen again. She couldn't afford to lose this volunteer position. If she did, she might as well kiss her chances of landing a paying hospital job goodbye. It's fine, Sakura. I'm just worried about you today. What? Sakura asked, maybe a little too quickly. She was still feeling on edge after her talk with Kakashi. The receptionist crouched down and helped Sakura gather the papers. You're a very hard worker. But, not to be rude, but have you seen yourself lately? Taken by surprise, Sakura said, No? She honestly couldn't remember the last time she'd spared a glance at herself in any reflective surface. She'd woken up too tired and sore to think about trivial things like how she looked. Well, then, said the receptionist as she folded her arms and raised an eyebrow. I think you look like you should go home and rest. When she arrived home, Sakura raced up the stairs to her bedroom and pried open her underwear drawer. To her relief, after quickly undoing the transformation disguise, she found that the scroll was safely tucked away in the drawer just as she had left it. But Sakura didn't hold her breath just yet because even though the scroll looked safe, someone could be aware of its existence. She made a mental note to purchase supplies for booby traps. Sakura then realized she didn't know what to do with herself. It was only 4 o'clock and her parents weren't home from work yet. And Sasuke had already designated tonight as a night off, so she wouldn't be seeing him as usual. So, what could she do instead? Well, first off, she needed to get out of her grimy work clothes and clean up. Sakura stripped off her civilian garments and tossed them, along with her training gear, into her laundry hamper. Her eyes were immediately drawn to her swollen ankles and bruised legs once her feet were bare. Reminded of the hospital receptionist's comment, she hesitantly stepped in front of her full-length mirror once she'd shed her clothes and gaped at the disaster before her. Her medical ninja alarm bells blared in her ears when she caught sight of all the bruises, scabs, and scrapes covering her body. And when she saw her face, she couldn't peel her eyes away. She had scratches on her cheeks and her complexion was pale and sunken. Her eyes were glazed over and bloodshot and accompanied by deep and heavy bags that she might as well be an ex-convict. Geez. Sakura never would have looked like this the last time she was this age. Maybe that receptionist had a point. Her physical body was a frighteningly accurate depiction of all the stress and exhaustion weighing her down. She turned away and reluctantly decided it was time to tend to her body. This will make me more productive in the long run, she reasoned with an affirmative nod. Besides, I'm sure even the most badass heroes have benefited from good a night of R&R hell. Tsunade-sama gets away with spending her weekends in casinos and that doesn't stop her from being a legend. In fact, that's kind of what makes her a legend. With a chuckle, she rifled through the shelves for a clean towel. She ran a bath and in the meantime gathered a generous amount of medical chakra to her core and allowed it to flow through her body, healing her extremities and easing the pain in her sore muscles and tendons. Sakura let out a long sigh of relief she hadn't realized she'd been holding. She figured that since she wasn't training tonight and she had no missions this weekend, she could afford to use up a little of her chakra on herself. By the time she was finished her bath and blow-drying her hair, Sakura's parents were home and calling her down for a hot takeout meal. They were ecstatic to have her in the house for such an extended period of time. It doesn't even feel like you're living here these days, her mother said with a drawn-out sigh. We never see you. Sakura was fortunate to have such supportive parents. And with a pang of sadness, she reminded herself that, in this world, she was fortunate to have parents who were safe from harm. That's it, Sakura thought. I'm spending the night with them. She talked with her parents at the dinner table for over an hour after they finished eating. She asked them about their days and described her volunteer work at the hospital. They were impressed, but not terribly surprised, when she mentioned her interest in the medical arts and how she would likely pursue a career in the field. Then they played a board game, drank tea, and went up to bed. Her parents were in high spirits and Sakura felt a million times more content than she had earlier that day. And in that moment of relaxation, Sakura wished she could forget about the time travel mission and just live her life like this. A life of simplicity and truly just going with the flow. A life she would almost certainly never have. When she returned to her bedroom, Sakura sat cross-legged on her bed and closed her eyes in preparation for a meditative exercise she hadn't practiced in ages. Basking in the sensation of her chakra rippling through the networks beneath her skin, she concentrated on slowing down its circulation to expend less energy. This technique was particularly helpful in not only calming her down, but also in taking some strain off of the organs involved in chakra circulation. Only an hour later, she felt sharper and re-energized. Excellent. And after a good night's sleep, when her mind was sharp and awake, she would count out the money she had made on Team 7's D-ranked missions and run some errands. This weekend off would definitely not go to waste. After slipping under the covers and flicking on the bedside light, Sakura pulled out a notepad and jotted down the items she needed to purchase. More poisonous plants, herbs. Medical encyclopedia. Med supplies, needles and stitches, toxin extract, test tubes, syringes, beakers. Jutsu resistant safe? Booby traps. She gazed down at the list, fully aware that she couldn't afford half the things on it. But hey, a girl could dream, couldn't she? And with that thought in mind, she hastily added one more item. Weapons, if on sale. And then she succumbed to the allure of a long sleep. But it wasn't long enough. Sakura was abruptly roused far earlier than she desired by someone shaking her arm. Her ninja instincts were instantly activated. She reached under her pillow for her kunai and pointed it at her mother's throat. Wait. Mother? Sakura gasped, immediately dropping the knife. I'm so sorry. You took me by surprise. Mabuki looked petrified. Be bad dream? She stammered and taking a step back. Yes, Sakura lied and stowing the knife back under her pillow. Sorry. It's fine. Mabuki said and forcing a smile. Well, someone is at the door and is demanding to see you. They said you would know why. Sakura jumped to her feet. What? She thought, a ripple of fear spreading through her. Was it someone who knew about the scroll? Someone from the future? Throat clenched, Sakura pulled on her white bathrobe and slippers. When her mother turned to exit the room, Sakura snatched for one of her poison-laced knives and clasped it beneath the fabric of her robe before heading to the stairs. She made her way down slowly, the flimsy, wooden boards creaking with each step, and when she reached the bottom, she found no one in the front entrance of her house. Were they hiding? Was this an ambush? She drew her knife and held it at her hip as she cautiously ventured towards the front door. And then she felt a presence on her right. Aha! Now I've got you. Wasting no time, she spun around, raising her weapon. A hand caught her wrist. You haven't worked on your reflexes, have you? Said a very familiar voice. What are you doing here? Sakura spluttered. What on earth was Sasuke doing in her house? She was quite relieved it wasn't an imposter, but seeing him here like this was so unexpected and so, well, wrong. Something about Sasuke's dark features and rigid, stoic demeanor simply clashed with her mother's teacup collection and lace doilies in the sitting room behind him. He pressed down hard on her palm, forcing her to release the knife which fell to the ground with a clatter. You've had your day off, he said calmly. So today we're training. Sakura pulled her hand out of his grasp and picked up the kunai. The nerve of him showing up like this and giving me a heart attack. Thank you for the tea, he added over her shoulder. Anytime, Sasuke. Came Mabuki's voice from somewhere in the kitchen. Sakura whirled around, her jaw hanging open, and then she narrowed her eyes in the direction of her teammate. How long have you been here? She asked, her heart rate rising. Did Sasuke seriously have tea with her mother? What the hell? He shrugged. Sasuke told me all about your extracurricular training, her mother answered, appearing at the entrance of the kitchen with a fond smile. And he very politely asked if he could take you out for the day. And I said yes, of course, so you'd better go get yourself ready. Sakura's wide eyes flickered between her mother and the smirking Sasuke next to her and wondered what exactly had transpired between them. She also had a hunch that she was being manipulated. All right, she said, a little baffled. I'll go get dressed. She could hear her mother chatting with her teammate down the stairs as she pulled on her training gear and grabbed the shopping list on her bedside table. When she returned, Sasuke was standing at the door with his bag slung over his shoulders. Let's go, he said a little impatiently while turning the handle. One sec, she said and running to the kitchen to grab a fruit for breakfast. When she returned, she added, I was actually planning to run a couple of errands this morning. So. I'll meet you at the training grounds a bit later. What errands? He asked, and shooting her a disbelieving glare. Before she had a chance to answer, he had snatched the shopping list right out of her hand and started scanning it. I can't afford most things on here, she said hurriedly and with a pang of embarrassment. But at the very least I need to stop for some plants and medical supplies. Weapons? You can keep using mine, he mumbled, ignoring her previous comment. Yeah, but I want to have more of my own. You know, for when I train by myself. He frowned. What are the traps for? I think someone is trying to get into my bedroom. Long story. He raised his eyebrows at this but didn't ask any other questions. All right, Sasuke said with finality in his tone and moving past the threshold. He shoved the list in his pocket. We'll stop for your plants and medical supplies on the way to the training grounds. Wait, she started, but he was already on the move. The two of them maneuvered through the crowded main road of the village at a rather brisk pace. It was the weekend and everyone seemed to be out and about today, making the road a little more difficult to navigate through. Sakura brushed shoulders with and received angry glares from a few people, and it didn't take her long to realize that many of those glares, particularly those from females around her age, had to do with who she was walking with. She managed to get needles, stitches, syringes, and toxin extract. Unfortunately, her tiny budget restricted her from purchasing test tubes and beakers, so she just looked up at the shining glass vials and let out a long sigh. "Do you need those?" Sasuke asked while nodding towards the supplies she was gazing at. She quickly turned away. "No," she lied. "Just, maybe I'll grab them next time." Sakura realized that there was no way she could take Sasuke into the flower shop with her. Not with Ino there. If Ino saw the two of them together, their friendship, and Sakura's only chance of getting medical herbs, would be in jeopardy. "Sasuke, do you mind waiting outside?" she asked as politely as she could. He glanced at her suspiciously. "I need to get a special deal on these herbs from Ino," she added while bowing her head apologetically. "And she probably doesn't want other potential customers knowing about it. You know, it's bad for business if she offers specials to everyone. And she might freak out if she saw me with you." "Fine," he said and exhaling deeply through his nose. "I'll go set up at the training grounds. Don't take long." And with that, he stalked off. The bells over the door chimed as Sakura entered the shop. When Ino saw her, she pulled out a package from under the counter. "I knew you'd drop in again today," she said with a coy smile. "You didn't come by yesterday, so I figured it was only a matter of time." Sakura returned the smile. "I owe you so much for this," she said. Ino waved her hand dismissively. No, it's fine." Sakura collected her new package of herbs and turned to exit the shop. "Well, I don't mean to leave so abruptly, but I've got to be somewhere today. Next time I promise to stay longer." "Where are you going with Sasuke?" Damn it. She might have glimpsed him through the window. "Training," Sakura answered quickly. "With our team. He doesn't live on this side of the village." "What is he doing around here?" Sakura suddenly hated how perceptive her friend was. "Kakashi-sensei wanted us to run errands," she lied. "Okay," Ino said with a shrug. "I was just curious." Later, forehead. To Sakura's relief, Ino was smiling at her again. But was that a fake smile? Ino had the power to make anyone in her presence feel as socially confused as Sai. Nonetheless, Sakura returned the smile and scurried out of the shop. Sakura and Ino always had a playful rivalry over Sasuke's attention when they were kids. And if the two girls had any chance of maintaining their friendship, it was of utmost importance that nothing serious blossomed between Sasuke and either of the girls. If Sakura continued spending so much time alone with him, it would inevitably seem like something more serious than Ino could tolerate was developing. So if Sakura wanted to keep those medical herbs coming, she would have to limit the amount of time she spent with Sasuke in public settings. But as far as the seriousness of her feelings towards him were concerned, Sakura knew she had broken that unwritten rule years ago. Broken it beyond repair. Chapter 7 Turning Tables. After a full day of chakra control, agility, and strength training exercises, to put it lightly, Sakura was exhausted. She stopped only briefly for a snack around noon, but otherwise, she'd spent 8 consecutive hours immersed in the ninja arts today. Despite how much pain she was in, Sakura was certain that her abilities were improving. Her newly healed muscles allowed her to lift heavier objects for longer periods of time, throw weapons farther with increased accuracy, and her ever-growing reserve of chakra took twice as long to deplete compared to a week ago. She still had a lot of work to do, but at least she was getting somewhere. Sasuke slumped down next to his bag, breathing heavily. He also seemed worn out after the long day. "That last drill was great," he said. Sakura designed an exercise where they stuck shuriken to the soles of their feet and then, with just the perfect release of chakra, kicked the weapons at a target. After an hour of using stationary targets, Sakura started tossing other shuriken into the air for him to hit. "We're going to have to work on that one tomorrow." Sakura smiled and folded her arms. "So we're training again tomorrow, are we?" He glanced over at her with raised eyebrows. why wouldn't we be? She shrugged. Well, maybe I have better things to do, she answered sarcastically, still smiling. But her comment seemed to confuse her teammate. Sasuke wasn't known for his sense of humor. Or social skills in general for that matter. He stood up. You're benefiting from this training as much as I am, maybe even more. Just think of where you'll be in a week from now at this rate. Sakura stared at him. Her sarcasm clearly went right over his head. No, I meant. We're doing this again tomorrow, Sasuke deadpanned defensively. Then he turned to pack up his bag. Sakura made a mental note to avoid using sarcasm the next time he was in one of these weird, intense moods. For me, training with you is the only thing worth my time these days, he mumbled from where he was crouched by his bag. Oh? Sakura perked up, her heart rate quickening. The powerful, evil Sasuke Uchiha, one of the biggest threats to the world I left behind, is this interested in learning from me, huh? The boy with famous, unrivaled abilities felt that training with an ordinary ninja with some skills in medical ninjutsu and slightly above average chakra control was the only thing worth his time. Her face and ears were suddenly feeling hot. So, tomorrow? Pulled back to earth, Sakura blinked and fought against the tightening in her chest. All right, she said, shrugging, and trying to seem as nonchalant as one possibly could after receiving praise from the Uchiha prodigy. She turned to grab her own bag and then reminded herself that this Sasuke wasn't an evil threat to the village. Sure, he was a prodigy, but right now he was just a young ninja in training looking to learn new skills. And when he mastered everything that Sakura had to teach him, he would move on in pursuit of new sources of power. He'll get over this phase, this is just a temporary interest. Sakura knew before she opened her eyes that someone was in her bedroom. From curled up under the blankets of her bed, she heard a faint rustling near the doorway. And once her mind was functional and her senses alert, she recognized a distinct chakra presence. The imposter was a ninja. Heart pounding, Sakura very carefully reached for the kunai under her pillow. Not taking any chances, she fired the knife in the direction of the chakra signature. With a resounding thunk, the knife struck the wall, missing the target. But it seemed to surprise the intruder enough to drop whatever they were holding onto her floor with a crash. Sakura somersaulted out of bed, making a beeline for the weapon holster on her desk. In one fluid motion, she snatched another knife from it and flicked on the small bedside light. Who are, she started, but she froze mid-sentence when she caught a glimpse of the imposter's face. Sakura? Called Mabuki from the bedroom down the hallway. What's going on in there? It's fine, Mom. Just a nightmare. Sakura answered while striding up to the now petrified imposter and pinning him to the wall with her arm. Sasuke. What the hell are you doing in my room? Sakura hissed and holding the knife to his throat. She studied him intensely, including his mannerisms and chakra signature, to ensure that this wasn't a substitution disguise or a genjutsu. He passed her brief assessment. This was Sasuke, all right. I was. Didn't I tell you I thought someone was sneaking into my bedroom? Didn't I tell you I wanted to set up traps in here to stop situations like this from happening? What made you think it would be fine for you to barge right in yourself? She glared at him, livid from the rush of emotional turmoil he caused her. I hadn't thought of that, he said, and carefully pulling her hand away from his neck. His wide eyes were flickering between her face and the kunai. Sakura stepped back and put her head in her hands. Why are you in my room? She asked again, quietly this time, trying to calm down and contain her anger. I remembered what you said. What you said about the intruders and the traps, he said, his voice shakier than usual. He was still pressing himself against the wall even though Sakura had released him. Since you weren't awake to train yet, I figured I wouldn't waste any time. So I started, Through her fingers, Sakura glimpsed the thin wires around her door. She followed them with her eyes and realized that they were part of an interconnected system of wires lining the walls of her entire room. You're setting up traps? She asked while lowering her hands. Sasuke exhaled sharply from his nose. Yeah, he said, avoiding her eyes. Letting out a deep breath and massaging her temples, Sakura tried to determine how she felt about this situation. She was conflicted between feeling gracious and pissed off. Thanks, she said slowly. But sneaking in my room like that was not a good idea. I get it, he said quickly. Sakura nodded. Good, she sighed while trying to wrap her head around what was going on. She walked over to her night table to get her water glass. Well, I guess I. Don't touch that, Sasuke said sharply and raising his hand in warning. I've set a trap there. What? She gasped and immediately retracting her hand. How many traps did you lay out in here? 12. Baffled, she whirled around to assess his work. Where are the others then? She asked. He straightened up. I'll walk you through them when you're ready to go, he said with a brisk nod in her direction. His comment reminded Sakura that she was wearing a light nightgown that wasn't the most conservative or practical outfit for ninja business. Fine. Give me a minute, she said and feeling her face flash as she turned away. Then Sasuke, despite his general inability to pick up on social cues, seemed to realize that he needed to leave. Right, he said and creeping out into the hallway while she got dressed. Sasuke pointed out all the traps he laid out in her room and Sakura politely asked him to remove several of them, specifically, the traps he laid in places she regularly accessed such as her personal bathroom entrance and the closet door. Just before they finished, an idea occurred to her. Can you please put one, around this drawer? Sakura asked and nodding towards the underwear drawer of her dresser. What's in there? Sasuke asked while raising an eyebrow. Nothing you'd be interested in, she answered quickly and tucking a loose strand of her shoulder-length hair behind her ear. If Sasuke took one look in there, he would definitely agree with me. He cast her a skeptical glance but set up a trap nonetheless and mumbled something that sounded like weird-ass stalker. After her room was as ninja-proofed as it could be while still being functional, Sakura forced her teammate to exit by her window so her parents wouldn't see him leave her bedroom, packed her bag, ate a quick breakfast, and met him at the training grounds as they had arranged. But this training session wasn't quite like the others. Sakura was miffed to find that the morning's incidents didn't seem to faze Sasuke at all. Despite how she'd ironically dreamed of getting this boy into her room for most of her life, now that he had a growing presence in her personal life, Sakura was just feeling resentful. Not only did Sasuke invade her privacy, but he set up traps that prevented her from accessing her own belongings without consulting her first. What if, during his snooping, he had stumbled upon the time travel scroll? His pushiness was making her vulnerable. He's getting too close, too comfortable. Sasuke was now explaining how to hold a bow but all Sakura could hear was his patronizing tone. Sasuke seemed to notice her faraway expression and paused. Well? He asked irritably while raising his eyebrows. Whoops. Sorry, what was the question? His dark eyes narrowed. You didn't hear a word I said, did you? Sakura shook her head. He rolled his eyes but started again. Unfortunately, the rift between them didn't end there. 2 hours later, the high branch Sakura was standing on in a training exercise snapped and she abruptly found herself plummeting to the ground, Sasuke's bow flying out of her hand. She managed to brace her fall by rolling as she landed but she overestimated the amount of force her skinny ankles could withstand. Her right ankle twisted awkwardly when she landed on it and it immediately began to throb. I caught the bow, Sasuke said when he emerged from the tangle of bushes ahead of her. It isn't damaged. Then he noticed his training partner's crumpled position on the ground. Heal yourself and get up. I want to get through a few more drills after this one. Just like that, Sakura's temper reached its limit. And she knew her emotions shouldn't take the reins and she knew she'd better just take a deep breath and hold her tongue. But she didn't. I'm done, Sakura said flatly. You can finish the drill yourself. Sasuke blinked. You don't like archery? He asked, clearly perplexed by her reaction. Sakura stood up and pumped just enough green chakra to her ankle to walk. She strode towards the tree stumps where her bag was left open on the ground. I'm done training with you today, she deadpanned without sparing him a glance. Sakura reached the bag and started shoving her measly collection of weapons inside it, preparing to depart from the training grounds. But when she motioned to grab one of her kunai, a blue sandal reached it before her hand did. Stepping down on her knife, Sasuke asked in an icy tone, "What are you doing?" "I'm leaving," she answered simply. "Going home for the day. I've had enough." "Enough of what?" he asked. Standing up and squarely facing her teammate, Sakura hissed, "Of you. You haven't apologized to me for this morning. You don't give me any space. And you've been patronizing me since we got here, treating me like a tool. Like I'm just another weapon in your bag." She stopped herself, wondering if what she was saying made any sense at all. She also realized that she would probably hit some sore spots if she didn't get a hold of herself. Sasuke folded his arms and stared at her seriously. He seemed to be contemplating something, and right when Sakura thought she was getting through to him he said, "That's it." Fuming, she snatched up her bag and started marching towards the village. Until Sasuke appeared in front of her and blocked her path. "Excuse me," she spat without meeting his eye. "You're mad at me," he noted. His casual tone didn't sit well with her, but Sakura tried not to linger on that. She took a deep breath. "Look, Sasuke. I'm not like you. With this revenge stuff. I need some space to figure things out on my own." His expression was unreadable and he made no motion to speak. "I'm in a very different situation than you are. My revenge is a little more fresh and confusing. I don't know how many people I need to kill. I don't know if I'll ever be able to do it." "You're weak. I'm helping you get stronger," Sasuke said flatly with a hint of coldness in his tone. His jaw was clenched and Sakura realized she was probably treading on thin ice. But this wasn't about him. This was about her mission. And it was dawning on her now that training with Sasuke was a terrible idea. If she was going to stop him from betraying the village one day, she needed to be stronger than him. If he trained with her and molded her every skill, she had no chance of outsmarting him. And no chance of saving him. And besides, spending so much time with Sasuke increased her risk of being blinded by her emotions. She couldn't afford to be his puppet. Tsunade sent her here to make some changes. Changes weren't going to happen if she kept following him around like she used to. "I need to be alone," she said firmly. "I need to focus on my own revenge." "I used to think that way too," he countered. "But I've realized that if I want power, I need to seek it out." "This is different," she snapped. "I need to work alone." "You're wrong. You just need. Stop. You're annoying me, Sasuke." "What?" Sakura stopped in her tracks. She could hardly believe the words coming out of her mouth. Could the tables have turned so much that she was using Sasuke's own lines against him? She'd lost count how many times he called her annoying in her old life. Even on that dreaded night, the night he knocked her unconscious, left her body on a park bench, and betrayed the Hidden Leaf Village. The night Sakura had worn her heart on her sleeve and had it torn to pieces. Annoying. Annoying. She repeated the words quietly, but not to the Sasuke who stood before her. "You're annoying." Chapter 8: The Presence. "I'll follow you wherever you want me to go. I just can't bear to lose you again. I don't want to have any more regrets." After a long pause, Sasuke glanced at her. "Do you really know what I want?" he asked, a manic smile tugging at his lips. Blood streamed down his face from his overworked, bloodshot eyes. "I don't care. I'll do whatever. I am going to destroy Konoha," he cried out, breaking into a full grin. His crimson eyes were wide and hungry. "That's what I want. Will you, Sakura, betray Konoha for me?" A cold laugh escaped him as Sasuke finally turned to face the cloaked girl standing across the stream. "Yes," she answered firmly. "If that's what you need me to do." "Prove it." He spat. He pointed to the red-haired girl sprawled on the ground beside him. "Finish her off. She is no use to me now and you would make a fine replacement." Sakura pulled out a knife and leaped over the stream, approaching the girl on the ground, a girl who she would later learn was named Karen. When their eyes met, something in the girl's stare indicated that she knew Sakura's true intentions. She raised the knife and her hand started trembling. This is it, Sakura thought, and squeezing her eyes shut. This is where it all ends. What's wrong, Sakura? A deep voice whispered from just beside her ear. Can't you do it? Sasuke was now standing directly behind her, mere inches away. It was now or never. As she started twisting her body around and the tears spilled from her eyes, Sakura reminded herself, this isn't the same Sasuke I used to know. If I kill him now, everything will be over. But she was too late. The chirping of Sasuke's Chidori drowned out the red-haired girl's straggled cry of warning. The lightning blade in his hand was aimed for her heart. Sakura sprang up in her bed so abruptly that she nearly toppled onto the floor. Her chest was rising and falling with each bated breath. She looked down at her shaking hand. No knife. It was a dream. Not a dream. A memory. She suddenly felt nauseous. Curling herself into a tight ball and pushing her hair away from her face, Sakura fought to clear her mind. Even if it wasn't just a dream, sometimes it felt like her past life was nothing but a mess of illusions and nightmares. But that was no nightmare. No, that was her brain giving her a vivid play-by-play of one of the more dramatic times that she and Sasuke had tried to murder each other. A banging on the door sounded through her bedroom. Sakura jumped and fumbled for her kunai under the pillow. Sakura? Her mother's voice called from the hallway. Are you all right, Sakura? Why did you lock your door? Oh, she said hoarsely and dropping the kunai. Why yeah, fine. Just a sec, I'll get it. Sakura hadn't told her parents about the booby traps yet, and until she did, they couldn't be in her room unattended, or they might fall prey to them. Sakura unlocked the door and Mabuki strode inside. You were groaning in your sleep, she said. Did you have a nightmare? Yeah, Sakura answered with a small, tired nod. Well, you'd better stop eating so close to your bedtime. That causes nightmares, you know, her mother said seriously and raising a lecturing finger. Anyways, I didn't realize you had another day off today. Sakura was dragged out of her dazed slumber. What? No, I don't. It was Monday. She glanced at the clock. Training with her team started in 3 minutes. Damn it. She cried. She must have slept through her alarm. I thought you were spending another day with your friend Sasuke, her mother said as Sakura dashed across her room in search of clean training clothes. He's a nice kid. Very grown up for his age. Sakura said while rooting through her drawer for a pair of spandex shorts to wear under her red training dress. I knew his parents when they were alive, you know, Mabuki continued despite Sakura's distractedness. They were quiet but good-natured people. I spoke with his mother several times when you were both just enrolling for school and before, well, that incident happened. Such a tragic thing to happen to a young boy. She paused, staring into the distance, seemingly lost in her own thoughts. Yeah, Sakura said quietly. She finally stopped her rummaging and turned to face her mother, her arms filled with clean clothes. Well, I'm just going to get dressed now and then I'll be off. Mabuki snapped out of her trance. Oh yes. I'll go prepare you something to eat. She straightened up. Sorry, a lot of things have been on my mind lately. You're growing up too fast, you know. First you become a full-fledged ninja, then you get your first job, you stay out half the nights, and now you have a boy following you around. Sakura feigned a smile. Huh. Not anymore. Sakura decided to take a shortcut to the training grounds, a path through an alley between 2 tall business buildings. Most young ninjas stuck to the main road or the rooftops. But Sakura was starting her second lifetime's worth of trips to the training grounds, so she had quite the arsenal of discovered shortcuts. Though she normally saved this one for when she was extra late. The alley was pitch black and rather creepy. But today she was beyond late, so she sucked in a breath and bolted into the dark, chilly passage. Halfway through the alley, Sakura sensed another chakra presence. She shrugged it off since she was nearing the training grounds. It would be unusual not to sense chakra at this point. Thump. She stopped in her tracks and whirled around. Someone had, ungracefully, landed on the ground somewhere behind her in the alley. Startled, Sakura drew a fistful of shuriken, and just as she brought them up to eye level, she felt it. A new presence. A presence that made the air go still and her blood run cold. Her senses told her that the new presence was somewhere behind her, cornering her between it and the person who loudly landed in the alley. Sakura was trapped. She peered over her shoulder towards the new, terrible chakra source, but couldn't make out a figure through the darkness. The new chakra was familiar. It was chakra she had encountered in her old life. Chakra that didn't belong here. Needless to say, Sakura was extremely late for training. She'd hurried to the emergency wing of the hospital and debriefed her examination of the dead Jonan's vital signs to the medical personnel there. The doctors seemed alarmed at first, probably by Sakura's proactive response and also by the situation altogether, but they expressed their gratitude before sending her to the Hokage Tower to file a report. When she arrived, Sakura half expected to find Tsunade sitting among the Jonin bodyguards, but instead she found old man Sarutobi, the third Hokage, sitting on the largest chair in the room. It was surreal to see him there, alive, and explaining the paperwork Sakura now had to fill out. Little did he or anyone else in the village know, if events unfolded as they did in Sakura's past life, his days were numbered. She completed the report much faster than anyone in the room anticipated. "What excellent penmanship for a young girl," one of the Jonin noted as he scanned over the document. An ANBU Black Ops team was sent to collect the body and investigate the alley. They returned before Sakura had left the tower and reported no traces of the mysterious chakra presence Sakura described. Then she was dismissed from the tower so that the Hokage and a small team could discuss the matter in privacy. What on earth was that about? On her way back towards the training grounds, along the main road this time, Sakura thought hard about the strange presence and what the whole bizarre situation could mean. She certainly didn't recall this incident happening in her past life. After all, if it had happened, she wouldn't have found out about it. She never used that alley the last time she was this age. So there was no reason to jump to the conclusion that the unusual presence had anything to do with her, or was there? What really struck Sakura was how familiar that sinister chakra had been. And she realized that she yelled out Tsunade's name not only because the chakra reminded her of someone in her previous life, but because the chakra seemed to resemble Tsunade's in some way. And that just didn't add up. She found Kakashi and Naruto sparring at their usual training spot. Right as she arrived, Naruto slipped on a patch of dirt, sending his handful of shuriken straight up into the air. Shit, Sakura thought, and realizing that Naruto's weapons were now descending to where he was spread-eagled on the ground. Both she and Kakashi fired their own shuriken at Naruto's to deflect them. With many clangs of metal striking metal, they managed to save Naruto from his own weapons in just the nick of time. "Thanks, Sensei," Naruto said with a relieved sigh. And, oh, Sakura-chan. My hero. He jumped up from where he was sprawled on the ground and sprinted over to her. "Glad to see that my entire team hasn't ditched me today," he added with a frown. "Sasuke isn't here?" she asked. "No. He asked to skip our session today," said Kakashi, who was approaching Duo. "Where were you this morning, Sakura?" Before answering, Sakura paused to consider whether Sasuke had ever skipped training like this in her past life. But her mind didn't linger on the question for long because she began describing her unexpected morning adventure. Kakashi's expression was indiscernible under his mask, as it usually was. "Why did you take that path?" Sakura shrugged, not understanding why Kakashi would ask her about that detail over the others. "I've taken that alley before and haven't had any problems. A similar situation happened there a while ago and most people have avoided it since," he answered. "Oh. I didn't realize," Sakura said honestly. She was never aware of that, so how would she have known to avoid the alley? Regardless, she got the sneaking suspicion that Kakashi found her actions unusual. Sakura only trained with Kakashi and Naruto for 1 hour before she left for a volunteer shift at the hospital. For once, the mind-numbing tasks felt comforting because she was so emotionally drained. Midway through her shift, Sakura's supervisor informed her that word of the mysterious alley incident had swept through the hospital. The nurses told us that you handled the situation tactfully and in accordance with standard medical ninja protocol. Needless to say, you're starting to get a reputation around here, she said with an impressed nod. Thank you, Sakura said while bowing deeply and struggling to contain her smile. Maybe things will pick up for me around here after all. After her shift, Sakura ate dinner with her family, cleaned up, and then she wondered what to do next. Normally she would meet with Sasuke to train around this time. With a small pang of regret, she realized that he probably wouldn't have any interest in training with her for a while. As satisfying as it had felt to be harsh with him the previous night, her words were meant for the Sasuke of her past life. This Sasuke, on the other hand, hadn't actually wronged her yet. For a moment she contemplated going out to find him but quickly staunched the idea. No, she told herself. This is for the best. As she had already reasoned, spending too much time training with Sasuke might inhibit her ability to stop him from leaving the village in the future. But when Sasuke didn't show up for their mission the next morning, Sakura grew a little concerned. She asked Kakashi if he had any idea of Sasuke's whereabouts. He got special permission to skip out on our mission today, Kakashi said flatly, without any intention to elaborate. After rescuing 3 stray cats, Sakura worked, ate dinner, cleaned up, and sat in her room restlessly. To busy herself, she organized her growing herb collection, added to the list of supplies she needed to purchase, and practiced controlling her medical chakra. But when Sasuke didn't show up for the 3rd day in a row, Sakura became worried. He got special permission again? She asked Kakashi before they set out to replace roof shingles on an office building. Yep, he said curtly before dropping the subject. That evening, Sakura went to the training grounds to squeeze in some extra practice by herself. She threw weapons and worked on basic strength training exercises. But it didn't take long for her to recall the many limitations of practicing without a training partner. For one thing, she was restrained to practicing techniques she already knew. Also, she wasted double the amount of time on the setup and takedown. As she was packing up for the night, Sakura scanned the grounds, hoping that Sasuke would jump out of the forest surrounding it. But he didn't. This isn't what I wanted. If anything, Sasuke's total absence was setting her back in her mission. She was supposed to stop him from leaving the village, but now, for all she knew, he could have already left. Maybe he was already pursuing a new source of power now that Sakura told him to leave her alone? And just maybe, in the worst-case scenario, Orochimaru or one of his henchmen already found Sasuke? Sakura shuddered at the thought. If that happened, her mission was as good as over. Failed. History would repeat itself and all of this would be for naught. Okay. Screw this. Sakura would find Sasuke if he didn't show up for their mission the next day. She had to apologize and convince him to train with her again. Because that was exponentially better than the alternative where Orochimaru, or some other dark source of power, lured him away from the village. So the next day, when Sasuke didn't show up for their mission again and Kakashi wouldn't provide any explanation why, Sakura mentally prepared her course of action. After her volunteer shift, she would go to the Uchiha residential compound. The entire vicinity was abandoned since the massacre except for the small apartment where Sasuke lived. She would start at his place and search the rest of the compound from top to bottom. If she couldn't find him, she would go to the Hokage Tower and ask if Sasuke was assigned any missions. And if all else failed, she would harass Kakashi for answers. He knew something about Sasuke's whereabouts that he wasn't telling her. But Sakura vowed to save this for a last resort since she was still getting the impression that Kakashi didn't trust her. Team 7's mission took longer than anticipated, so she rushed to her volunteer shift without eating lunch. Upon her arrival at the hospital, Sakura was informed that today she would be directly assisting a doctor before a surgery by cleaning and polishing all of the tools the doctor would need. Although the work wasn't any less tedious than her usual filing and paperwork, Sakura considered this an upgrade. She was going to be in much closer proximity to the patients and medical procedures. Despite her excitement over the small promotion, Sakura couldn't push the thoughts of her missing teammate from her mind. What if she couldn't find him? What if no one in the village knew where he was? Sakura would have to arrange a search party. Well, if anyone takes me seriously, that is. It wasn't like she could warn people about Orochimaru's interest in Sasuke. In this life, she hadn't yet encountered and shouldn't even know about Orochimaru in the first place. And as she was packing up at the end of her shift, Sakura's mind was flooded with thoughts of a new dilemma: how she would break into the Uchiha compound. Surely Sasuke filled the place with traps. If he set up 12 in her bedroom, there were probably thousands of them hidden throughout the complex of abandoned houses. She started to panic. Maybe she'd be better off skipping that plan and going straight to the Hokage? Sakura's mind was racing through her options when she walked out the front doors of the hospital. Her mind was so preoccupied, in fact, that she almost didn't notice Sasuke sitting on a bench right beside the front door. Wait. Genjutsu? Nope. It really was Sasuke. Flabbergasted, she slowly approached him. He appeared to be in a bit of a trance, but when he finally noticed her, he sprang up to his feet. He was wearing a signature blue shirt paired with white shorts. "They wouldn't let me wait inside," he said. "Wait?" Sakura repeated dumbly. Finding him here, right outside the hospital doors in broad daylight, was the last place she expected to find Sasuke after his complete disappearance for 3 days. Sasuke straightened up and his eyes darted away from her blank stare. "I'm here to apologize," he said quickly, visibly struggling to force the words out. "For what happened?" Sakura was now beyond shocked. Frozen to the spot, she spluttered, "You apologize? Why?" His eyebrows furrowed at her response. "Oh. I thought you were upset by our exchange the other night." He glanced down again and frowned. Now Sasuke's facial expressions weren't easy to decipher because they were so few and far between, but since Sakura had known him her whole life, she could tell he was grappling with a slew of feelings. He was now determinedly staring at the hospital wall. "I forgot that you've only been an Avenger since recently. So it's not fair for me to expect you to think rationally yet." Sakura was dumbfounded. Although this was possibly the most insulting apology she had ever received, apologizing was the last thing she expected Sasuke to do. Forgive you," she said, still watching him in amazement. "And I'm sorry too. I guess I crossed a line." He acknowledged her comment with a curt nod. "So where have you been?" she asked, unable to conceal the anxiousness in her voice. He'd better have a bloody good explanation for making her spend her entire morning hyperventilating. His eyebrows quirked with surprise. "Oh. I did a little research on my clan's history and asked to join an archaeological team dig up some artifacts that belonged to my ancestors. I told Kakashi and I assumed he would have filled you in." Sasuke's nonchalant tone kindled a new anger in Sakura's heart towards her sensei. If she'd known where Sasuke went, she would have been saved from so much unnecessary worry and stress. "Okay," she said quietly, feeling a mixture of relief and frustration. When unwelcome tears welled up in her eyes, Sakura turned away and started walking towards the village core so her teammate wouldn't have a chance to clearly see her face. But to her dismay, Sasuke followed suit. "So what makes you figure my revenge was triggered by something recent in my life?" she asked, attempting to change the subject. It took a moment for Sasuke to answer. "You've changed," he said slowly. He tilted his head to gaze up at the clouds with his hands in his pockets. "You keep to yourself more than you used to." He shrugged. "And you're more focused." Sakura raised her eyebrows. "You noticed me in our academy days, huh?" she asked while trying to contain her bewilderment. "Of course," he answered a little too quickly. Sakura shot him a sideways glance to find he was determinedly staring ahead of him. "Weird hair," he mumbled. "I need to change the direction of this conversation and fast," Sakura thought as her heart rate began to skyrocket. It was becoming difficult to get a hold of herself. She chuckled nervously. I've got a target painted on my head, she said, attempting to lighten the mood and relieve some of the tightness in her chest. But pink hair does come in handy when fallen soldiers are seeking medical attention on a battlefield. Sasuke stopped walking. What? She asked, and spinning around to face him. He was rummaging through the bag he was holding. Medical. That reminds me, he said, and pulling out a glass container. Sakura noticed its tiny spout and the measurements printed along its side. A beaker. We made a couple of stops on the way back, he said while reaching back in the bag and taking out a box of test tubes. These are good ones, apparently. You can't get them here. Sakura's mouth fell open. He didn't, actually? Noticing her unresponsiveness, Sasuke frowned and elaborated. You said you wanted these, right? If these will make you stronger, you'll be a better asset to our team. Sakura regretted comparing this Sasuke to the one in the future. The one in her nightmares. This was the Sasuke she was trying to save. Sure. He was a bit of an asshole at times and had hardly any skill in reading social cues, but this guy in front of her was really just a lonely, confused boy with kindness and fierce loyalty somewhere deep in his heart. This was the Sasuke who she fell in love with. He was looking at her expectantly. Sakura opened her mouth but no words came out. Instead, she felt a tear trickle down her face. Sasuke's eyebrows furrowed. Wrong ones? He asked, and motioning to examine the glass items he was holding. But he hadn't even lifted them a fraction when Sakura threw her arms around him. Sasuke immediately tensed at her touch. They're perfect, she said quietly into his shoulder. Thank you. Oh, he mumbled with a sigh of relief and relaxing slightly. You're happy. But before either of them seemed to process what was going on, Sakura sensed presences behind her and jumped away from Sasuke. It was Team 10. The newcomers were staring at the two of them with wide eyes. Shikamaru let out a low whistle. Choji sniggered. And Ino's expression was unreadable. Chapter 9 Call to Action. After days of begging, pleading, and fist fights, Team 7 was granted permission to go on a C-ranked mission. Naruto, who was, unsurprisingly, the source of 90% of the begging and 100% of the fistfights, whooped enthusiastically when the third Hokage announced the news. This mission will take several days to complete. Your team will act as bodyguards for a certain individual, he explained. And then Sarutobi beckoned for said individual to enter the room. Tazuna the bridge builder stumbled in with a half-empty bottle of alcohol in his hand. What's this? He slurred as he stumbled through the door. They're all a bunch of brats. Especially the short, blonde one with the stupid-looking face. Needless to say, Tazuna and Naruto were not on very good terms from the get-go. Sakura found herself dreading the mission. She knew what was going to happen. They were going to find out that Zabuza the demon, a dangerous criminal who was way out of their leagues, was looking to assassinate the bridge builder on behalf of Gato, a corrupted billionaire who had overthrown the entire land of waves. Yes, there was evil to fight in the land of waves, but no evil that would alter the fate of her time travel mission. Sakura was far more interested in searching the Leaf Village from top to bottom to ensure that the strange presence from the alley was indeed gone. And she wasn't sure if she felt comfortable being separated from the time travel scroll in her underwear drawer for so long. But in the end, she decided against voicing her reluctance to embark on the mission. She didn't want Kakashi to find her any more suspicious than he already did, and Naruto would likely escalate to a whole new level of annoying if she backed out on Team 7's most thrilling adventure yet. Yeah. Naruto exclaimed as the five of them stepped out past the village's gates. This is my first time ever leaving the village. I feel like an explorer. He cried enthusiastically while punching his fists in the air. Their client, Tazuna, shot Naruto a disapproving look. The guy really couldn't act any less like a bodyguard. And so the long journey began. The faster we get this over with, the better, Sakura thought, trying to tune out Naruto and the bridge builders bickering. She tightly clutched the straps of her backpack and pursed her lips. Well, there was no turning back. She would have to make the most of the mission and take every possible opportunity to sharpen her skills. That was when Sakura spotted a puddle on the ground. She noticed Kakashi's eyes trained on it as well. It hadn't rained in days. And that was when she remembered they were all about to get ambushed. Splush! Get ready to fight! Sakura yelled and drawing another kunai to replace the one she had sent hurling into the puddle. Right on cue, the demon brothers sprang out of the water. It appeared she would have an opportunity to exercise her skills sooner than anticipated. You brat! One of the brothers growled through the metal mask covering the bottom half of his face. He lowered himself into a battle stance like a wild cat coiling its body to pounce. Stand back! Kakashi instructed while flash-stepping between the demon brothers and his students. Let me handle this. That was when the brothers attacked Team 7's leader. They shot metal chains out of large devices on their hands, which snaked around Kakashi's entire body before he had a chance to react. Then, while forcefully thrusting their arms to the side, the demon brothers reeled the chains back in and, through a cloud of dust, Naruto, Sasuke, Sakura, and Tazuna watched Kakashi's body get sliced apart. The sickening sounds of severing flesh and snapping bones echoed through the forest path. Gross, Sakura thought while a disturbing chill crept up her spine. Good thing that isn't the real Kakashi. Sensei! Naruto cried, all hope drained from his voice, as he stared in horror at the limbs of his leader landing in a pile on the road. He appeared to be fighting an urge to vomit. Sasuke, on the other hand, had a far better handle on his emotions and took this opportunity to strike. He leaped high in the air and fired fistfuls of weapons at the chains, pinning them to tree trunks and trapping the enemies. He landed directly on the brothers' arms, and by the time they realized what he was up to, he had dislodged the chains from the devices in their arms with one sweeping kick. Sakura had to admit that, despite his inexperience with real missions, Sasuke's ninja instincts were impressive. He sure had a natural knack for acting under pressure. Realizing that they were fighting a losing battle, the demon brothers decided to get down to business and attack their original target. They're after the bridge builder, Sakura warned her teammates. She raced over to Tazuna and stood before him protectively while loading chakra to her fists. Maximizing the few seconds she had to prepare a counterattack, Sakura lurched forward. But just before she could strike her deadly fists into the brothers' faces, an Uchiha crest appeared before her eyes. Stay behind me! Sasuke yelled while throwing himself in front of her with his arms outstretched. Shit, Sakura thought. Her body was already moving, and at this rate, her fists were going to collide with the back of her teammate's head. She needed to change the course of her attack. And fast. Don't move! She called out, before stepping up onto Sasuke's back and launching herself straight at the brothers. The unanticipated impact of Sakura's foot on the small of his back forced Sasuke down onto all fours, but he still gave Sakura enough leverage to propel her body up into the air. Shanaru! She cried as her chakra-loaded fists made contact with the brothers' masked faces with a sickening crack. They flew back into a tree and landed in a crumpled heap. Sakura admired her work for a moment before turning back to her teammates and clapping her hands dismissively. They were staring up at her with expressions of utter shock. Naruto, who had apparently collapsed with fright during the battle after being nicked with one of the demon brothers' poisonous blades, was the first to scramble to his feet. Sakura-chan, how, he started, but even he seemed to be at a loss for words. Sasuke remained silent, as he often did, though he looked like he wanted to say something but wasn't sure what. Then Kakashi reappeared, revealing that he used a transformation jutsu to conceal himself long before the demon brothers exposed themselves. Well. It seems you guys didn't need me to butt in after all, he said. Sakura proudly recalled how smoothly she and Sasuke handled the assault. Having him on her team would likely make her abilities seem less out of the ordinary. Like him, she would just seem like a prodigy with an aptitude for making quick decisions. Kakashi had no reason to suspect that she already had hundreds of C-ranked missions under her belt. Thanks, Sensei, Sakura answered cheerily while offering him a respectful bow. I'm so relieved that you're safe after all. And nice decoy, Sasuke. She added over her shoulder. Sasuke scowled and shoved his hands deep into the pockets of his white shorts. I wasn't a decoy, he shot back. I was trying to protect you. Sakura turned to face him and folded her arms. By throwing yourself in front of me without any prepared counterattack? Sounds more like you needed the protecting, she retorted with a smirk. Sasuke looked so livid that steam may as well be shooting out of his ears. But instead, his scowl deepened and he turned his head away from her. Alright, that's enough, Kakashi chimed in. You both did well. Sasuke, good setup. And Sakura, excellent finish. Setup. Sasuke repeated through gritted teeth, but Kakashi didn't seem to hear him. Naruto wasn't handling the situation well. He was more clearly than ever before the dead weight on the team. He drew a knife and embedded it deep into his own hand to flush out the poison while making a noble speech about how he vowed, on his self-inflicted injury, to protect the bridge builder at any cost. That's great, Naruto, Kakashi drawled. But if you lose too much blood, you'll die. Naruto proceeded to freak out, so Sakura offered to heal him. Now, Sakura, said Kakashi, and turning to face her once Naruto's new wound was healed. How did you know Tazuna was their target? Oh crap. Maybe she shouldn't have been so proactive in their battle. She answered lamely, racking her brain for a believable explanation. Instincts. Damn it. That's all I've got. Kakashi said, and raising an eyebrow. Thankfully he didn't linger on the topic. Kakashi went on to interrogating the demon brothers and getting Tazuna to admit that he was, in fact, a wanted man, but he only had enough money to pay for C-ranked bodyguards. None of this post-battle talk was new to Sakura until Kakashi turned back to her and made a surprising comment. Sakura, please pay careful attention, he said seriously. I wasn't expecting to ask this of you, but it sounds like we may need to rely on your medical expertise more than I was intending. Of course, Sensei, Sakura said with a nod. And for that reason, I forbid you from engaging in frontline combat. What you did back there was great, but now we need to keep you safe. And in exchange, you keep us alive. Then he turned to Sasuke and Naruto. Hear that, boys? We protect Tazuna and Sakura at all costs from here on out. Yes, sir. Naruto said with a grin and forming a salute while Sasuke nodded at his side. Sakura was used to this kind of treatment. She fully understood the rationale for keeping the medical ninja safe. But it meant she wouldn't have a chance to enhance her skills in battle like she was hoping, making this entire mission completely useless after all. And she couldn't help feeling unnerved by how this also meant she would be putting her life in a young Naruto's hands. The next series of events unfolded exactly how Sakura remembered them. Upon their arrival to the Land of Waves, they encountered Zabuza the demon. This time, Sakura decided to keep her mouth shut about her knowledge of the enemy's battle tactics. She didn't want to rouse any further suspicions from her sensei. Team 7 engaged in battle. Recognizing this as an enemy to be reckoned with, Kakashi revealed his Sharingan eye and used it to perform his signature mimicking of the enemy's ninjutsu. Zabuza was certainly a unique opponent. For one thing, he had a physique that was less common among ninjas. He was an enormous, brawny man with taut, rippling muscles. And somehow, despite his stature, he was extremely fast. Second of all, Zabuza was known as one of the 7 swordsmen of the mist and wielded a heavy cleaver that was just as long as he was tall. And finally, there was something about him that was inexplicably menacing. Perhaps it came from the mean look in his dark, beady eyes, or that demonic, bone-chilling chakra signature of his. Either way, Team 7 was in for a battle far out of their leagues. Sakura was itching to join the fight, but she obeyed her sensei and stayed at the bridge builder's side. And she knew that Zabuza could kill her in an instant if she tried anything rash. He was a hired assassin, after all. So Sakura resisted her offensive urges and watched Kakashi get trapped in Zabuza's water prison. She watched the Uchiha prodigy lose his composure and get painfully slammed into the ground. She watched Naruto bravely retrieve his Leaf Village head protector from under the demon's foot, although it took him several near-fatal blows to get it. Sakura's hands, defensively outstretched and gripping her kunai, were shaking now. She reminded herself that the boys got themselves out of this once and they could do it again. And just when she considered disobeying her sensei and intervening, her teammates prepared a brilliant counterattack. Naruto distracted Zabuza with his shadow clones while Sasuke fired a demon wind shuriken, which was actually a substitution for the real Naruto, straight at their opponent. Naruto ditched his shuriken disguise when he was directly behind Zabuza and attacked, forcing his opponent to release Kakashi from the water prison. Then Kakashi and Zabuza engaged in a full-fledged ninjutsu battle beyond any of their capabilities, so Naruto and Sasuke returned to Sakura, who placed her hands on their backs and healed their minor injuries. And then, out of nowhere, two humongous needles pierced Zabuza in the throat. He collapsed to the ground and went still. Shocked, Team 7 gathered around him and checked his vital signs. Kakashi pronounced him dead. But Sakura knew otherwise. A person adorned in dark green robes and a sinister, white mask appeared in an overlooking tree, introducing himself as Haku, the ninja hunter. He thanked them for forcing Zabuza into a weakened state, but explained that he wanted to put the notorious villain out of his misery himself. "You're lying." All heads turned to Sakura. "Sakura, he killed Zabuza," Kakashi said. Sakura knew she should bite her tongue. But she couldn't. The mere sight of the masked boy brought her blood to a boil. She didn't care if he was just a tool playing out Zabuza's bidding. The last time Sakura saw this boy, he had gruesomely defeated Sasuke right before her eyes, leaving him paralyzed in a death-like state. And yes, in the end he didn't actually kill Sasuke. In fact, Haku ended up choosing to spare Sasuke's life by a thread. But the whole encounter was Sakura's first experience with real grief and emotional trauma. Because of Haku, she would forever be haunted by the image of the boy she loved dead in her arms on the bridge in the land of waves. And in this moment, Sakura's heart had far greater sway over her actions than her reasoning. "Zabuza isn't dead. And this boy is his puppet," she said in a far more commanding tone than she thought she was capable of. Haku sprang down from the tree to where Zabuza's body lay. "I killed him," Haku replied coldly while securing one of the demon's arms around his shoulders and lifting the enormous man up. "Then what are you doing picking him up?" Naruto yelled and waving an accusatory finger at the masked boy. Sakura felt a rush of gratitude towards her blonde teammate. As unbelievable as her claim might seem to everyone, at least Naruto had her back. "I'm disposing of the body," Haku said simply. "Ninja hunters cover up their tracks." He stood up, made a hand seal with his free hand, and, moments later, they were all engulfed in a cloud of thick, cold mist. Team 7 surrounded Tazuna and drew their weapons. Was Haku planning to strike them? They whipped their heads around, searching for any signs of Haku's attack. But there were none. "You are an extraordinarily perceptive girl. We will not forget you," Haku's voice rang through the vicinity. And when the mist dissipated, he and Zabuza were gone. The others rounded on Sakura. "How?" Kakashi began, but Sakura interrupted with her prepared answer. "I encountered it in my training as a medical ninja," she half-lied hurriedly. The masked boy put Zabuza in a death-like state without piercing any of his vital organs. After using that little trick, it seemed the boy was planning to take Zabuza away to safety while pretending to be our ally. But Kakashi didn't seem to hear her. He was swaying on the spot. "Sensei?" Naruto asked, but the word barely escaped his lips when Kakashi collapsed onto the ground. Sakura rushed over to him and didn't even need to look at his vital signs to know what was going on. Chakra depletion. "He probably used his Sharingan too much," she explained to the others. It wasn't unusual for Kakashi to get like this. Nonetheless, it was crucial that he rested in a safe place immediately. With the strongest member of their team out of commission, Team 7 would be at a huge disadvantage if another fight ensued. "We'll take him to my place," said Tazuna. "We are nearly there anyways. Let us hope no more enemies lie in wait for us." Alright, let's move, Sasuke said while hoisting Kakashi up onto his back. The sooner we get there the better. Once they were in Tazuna's house, the trio of genin lay their sensei down on a bed. Sakura injected him with a mild painkiller that would both relieve him from some discomfort when he woke up and help him sleep soundly. They were introduced to the bridge builder's mild-natured daughter, Tsunami, and her moody son, Inari. And as Naruto did with most new people he met as a young teenager, he immediately got on Inari's bad side. They launched into a heated debate over the value of ninjas and whether heroes existed, which ended in Inari storming away to his bedroom. After lunch, Kakashi woke up. He claimed that he needed nearly a week before he would be strong enough to face Zabuza again. So in the meantime, Team 7 would have to lay low. After helping Tsunami with the dishes, Naruto went snooping through the house, looking for Inari, no doubt, and Sasuke claimed he was going to search for information on Zabuza. Sakura decided to use this opportunity to slip out into the village before the boys noticed her absence. The land of waves was riddled with poverty. But Sakura remembered it having a medical shop that sold a unique array of items that might be worth a visit. She navigated through the dirty, crowded streets while keeping her head low. It seemed that just about everyone was wearing brown, tattered rags, and Sakura noticed that the shelves in the shops selling food were nearly bare. She felt a stab of sadness in her heart at the dreadful living conditions, but reminded herself there wasn't anything that she could do about them, not right now, and so she kept walking. After fending off 3 creepy men from trying to cop a feel, those sick perverts, Sakura stumbled on a shop selling home-brewed medications. She inspected the vials and containers lining the walls, but the ingredients weren't listed anywhere on the packages. Erring on the side of caution, she placed the medications back onto their respective shelves and turned to leave. Then she felt the presence. The exact presence she detected in the alley in Konoha. From somewhere within the medicine shop. An icy, stinging sensation raced up her spine, sending chills across her exposed skin. Sakura instinctively reached to her weapon pouch for a knife while nervously glancing over her shoulder. There were only 3 people in the store besides herself, 2 of them being a mother and her child, and the other, an old lady standing behind the cash register. This chakra signature isn't coming from them. She whirled around and, as abruptly as it appeared, the presence vanished. Sakura scanned the store with wide eyes. Was that my imagination? She accidentally caught eyes with the lady behind the register and quickly turned away and left the shop. Once she was back in the bustling streets, Sakura racked her brain for any memories of the chakra presence in her previous life. She also wondered why it would be in the land of waves when she sensed it in Konoha so recently. Was someone following her? Was it possible that someone from the future also traveled back in time and was onto her? Was this a coincidence? And what if the presence wasn't there at all and this was just a product of Sakura's exhaustion from the long journey? Bump. Lost in her thoughts, Sakura collided with someone. She jumped back and was just reaching in her weapon holster for a knife when she noticed the small child scrambling to his feet before her. Oh! Sakura exclaimed and extending a hand to help the child up. He flinched at her offer to help. The child was missing his front teeth and appeared to be wearing a potato sack as a tunic. But what grabbed Sakura's attention most were his black eye and the scars running up his arms. Her chest tightened and she crouched down so that she was on eye level with the child. He couldn't be any older than 5. I'm sorry, Sakura said as sincerely as she could. But the kid remained frozen to the spot, his alarmed expression unchanging. Can I have a look at your arms? I'm a doctor and I can make them feel better. He didn't budge, so Sakura hesitantly inched her hand towards him, beckoning for him to take it. It's okay, she said. I want to help you. Ever so slowly, the boy extended his arm and placed his palm on Sakura's hand. His wide eyes were trained on hers the entire time and Sakura's heart gave a small leap at his trusting gesture. She quickly pumped medical chakra to her hands which wrapped around their palms. The boy's eyes widened, mesmerized by the green glow creeping up his arm. He let out a tiny yelp when Sakura's chakra reached one of the first deep cuts. Sakura patted his other shoulder with her free hand to calm him. She closed her eyes and concentrated, redirecting the chakra from cut to cut, healing each one, and even removing old, scabbed-over wounds. When she was finished, Sakura opened her eyes to the boy's enormous, toothless grin. He emitted a straggled cry of joy, pointing to his now healed arm excitedly while bouncing on the balls of his feet. "Feel better?" she asked with a smile. "Now for the other arm." He complied and she healed it. And it was only when she was working on his black eye did Sakura notice the crowd of tiny figures gathering around them. Children of varying heights and ages, but of relatively similar body types, the malnourished type, were drawing nearer and watching intently. Sakura's heart started to pound when she saw the sea of bruises and scars, but what got to her most was the silent plea in their wide, hungry eyes. And the urge to help she felt in response to their stares was impossible to ignore. "Gather round," Sakura heard herself say. "I am going to heal all of you." And for the second time that day, it was not her brain but her heart calling her to action. 2 hours later, Naruto and Sasuke found Sakura in the village. By then she had depleted a significant amount of her chakra and was fighting against the onslaught of warning signs that her body couldn't take much more of this. "Sakura-chan." Naruto called through the ever-growing crowd of children. There were at least 40 of them now. "Where have you been? We've been searching for you." "I've been right here," Sakura answered without averting her eyes from her current patient. She was starting to feel dizzy and her dry throat clenched when she spoke. As she finished sealing the stub of a missing finger on an older girl, she noticed that her hands were trembling. But when she looked around at all of the small, expectant faces, she knew giving up wasn't an option. "Sakura, you need to stop," Sasuke said seriously. He and Naruto had made their ways through the crowd. He crouched down beside her in an attempt to catch her unwavering attention. "You're going to end up like Kakashi." "Sakura-chan, this is amazing." "It really is. But you need to go back and rest or you'll need the help," Naruto chimed in. "But..." "No," Sasuke said firmly while grabbing Sakura's arm and hoisting her to her feet. That was when it dawned on her just how exhausted she was. She was on the verge of collapsing. "That's enough," he said, his tone softening. "Don't forget your mission." Sakura's heart stopped. "My mission?" she repeated and feeling her hands grow clammy. He was right. Her mission. She needed to build her strength. Kill Orochimaru. Save Sasuke. Investigate the strange presence. But instead she was wasting time and chakra on impoverished children who she had no hope of saving on her own. "What am I doing?" Frustrated, Sakura turned away from her teammates and started massaging her temples. But her legs were still wobbling, and Sasuke was far too observant not to notice, so he placed a steadying hand between her shoulder blades. "Yes," he said, and raising an eyebrow at her unusual response to his comment. "How are you going to protect the bridge builder if you don't have any chakra left?" "Oh. That mission. All right," she said quietly while attempting to steady herself. Sasuke waited patiently as she regained some control over her legs before retreating his hand. "Thanks," she muttered before scanning the crowd for Naruto. As it turned out, all that time he was teaching several of the kids a secret handshake. Sakura's gaze lingered on the sea of starving, pleading eyes, all watching her intently. The pain in her chest returned. "I can't leave them." That would contradict her very nature as a healer. And Sakura knew there was only one way to fight this pain. Time travel mission be damned. "I'll be back tomorrow," she announced before she could stop herself. "I just need some rest. And when I'm strong again I'll help as many more of you as I can." The crowd of children cheered. A few of the smaller kids near the front even dropped to their knees in gratitude and others offered deep bows. Naruto and Sasuke gaped on, clearly shocked by their teammates' abrupt claim. The boys eventually managed to drag Sakura away from the village. "We're going to be late for dinner. Hurry up, you guys." Naruto, who was leading the way, called over his shoulder. "You could really use the energy, Sakura-chan." She nodded and stared at her dragging feet. Why did you leave without telling anyone? Sasuke asked. Sakura shrugged. I wanted to run some errands. I knew you guys would have tried stopping me, so I figured I'd just go myself. Sasuke frowned. Naruto whirled around to face her. That's not smart of you, Sakura-chan. I mean, you're tough and everything, but you're a girl. A small, cute girl, he added with a cheeky smile and a wink. And, there are a lot of perverted creeps in that village. Even as a ninja, you don't want to get caught alone with one of those creeps. He visibly shuddered. Sasuke's jaw was clenched. It's part of our mission to protect you. And we can't do that if you run off. Sakura nodded but kept her mouth firmly shut. Sasuke was confirming her sneaking suspicion that he wouldn't condone her informal medical practice in the village. And I guess Naruto and I will alternate staying with you while you help those kids tomorrow. Her stomach did a somersault. He's supporting me? Really? Sakura asked and raising her eyebrows. You're not going to try to stop me from going back? Sasuke shrugged and gazed at the back of Naruto's bobbing, blonde head. No, I won't, he said, and averting his stare to the ground. Strands of his black hair fell forward at the motion and obscured his eyes from view. It's good, what you're doing. I want to help, he added quietly. Not entirely sure what to make of his comment, Sakura felt her face warm. She had been certain that Sasuke would disapprove of her proposal. But maybe he saw some good in it after all. After a moment, Sasuke glanced in her direction again. And this will be good practice for your medical ninjutsu. You're right, she said. I wasn't really thinking of that. Yeah, and this will be good practice for my bodyguard skills, Naruto said, and finally turning back to face his teammates. He curled his biceps and shot Sakura a smug grin. Just tell everyone I'm your boyfriend, Sakura-chan. Those creeps won't even think of going anywhere near you. Chapter 10 Love Triangle. She's back. Have you seen her yet? Do you think she'll stay? Things won't be the same for me after this. She's a beacon of hope to our village. The Pink Medic. Sakura's informal medical practice was gaining a reputation in the land of waves. Early the next morning, she returned to the spot where she healed the first child, only to discover that an enormous crowd of children was eagerly waiting for her. As word of her practice spread, she was exposed to increasingly grave and complex injuries. By late morning, Sakura was tending to wounded villagers of all ages and all walks of life. Her healing station became increasingly sophisticated as the hours stretched on. With the help of kind volunteers from the village, before lunchtime, Sakura found herself working under a huge tent sheltering a table, several chairs, and 5 makeshift beds for her patients. Naruto, Sasuke, and Kakashi organized a place for the villagers to form a line by pegging ropes to wooden posts. Sakura's patients willingly abided to the arrangement, allowing those with more critical wounds to skip to the front of the line. This is quite something, Sakura, said Kakashi from where he sat across from the patients' beds. He was on bodyguard duty and sent the boys off to watch over the bridge builder for the morning. He was still recovering from severe chakra depletion and the injuries Zabuza inflicted. He spent his entire shift in a chair beside his crutches propped up on the wall of the tent. He seemed content with the opportunity to read a certain little orange book, but he asked Sakura the occasional question. I know, Sakura said hurriedly as she beckoned for a young boy at the front of the line to get onto an empty bed. But there are just so many of them. And I don't have any medications or even bandages to work with. You seem very well versed though, Kakashi said while closing his book and folding his arms across his chest. You really have been doing this for a long time, haven't you? Yes, Sakura answered quickly and turning her attention to a woman with a badly broken leg. Kakashi watched her intently for several minutes before returning to his book. After her lunch break, Sakura noticed that her reserve of chakra had indeed grown since her time travel mission began and that her manipulation of medical chakra was refining. Despite her exhaustion, she knew that if she took periodic breaks, she could heal a significant number of villagers. Maybe Sasuke was right after all. Maybe this practice wasn't a complete waste of time, But Sakura couldn't help feeling weary. There was no way she could heal everyone alone. And she suspected that her work would anger Gato, the village tyrant. Would he send a ninja assassin after her? She shuddered at the thought. And who knew what other enemies her goodwill would attract? Her pink medic reputation made her rather identifiable too. Maybe I should dye it or invest in a wig after all. Sakura-chan. Halting her train of thought, she turned to the source of the voice. Naruto, who was now on guard duty, was leading a woman wearing a tattered, brown cloak to the front of the line. What's wrong? Sakura asked the woman, expecting her to present a critical injury. She is here to assist you, Naruto said with an enormous grin and a double thumbs up. She's a civilian nurse and offered to help you run this thing. I don't have very advanced skills but I know how to treat basic injuries, the woman said and bowing deeply. It's the very least I can do. Taken by surprise, Sakura blinked several times then nodded. Thank you. Could you look after the first 2 beds? By the time Sasuke's bodyguard shift started, Sakura was overseeing not only 3 civilian medics but also 2 ninjas with basic skills in medical ninjutsu, each manning her own bed. She felt right at home in her authoritative role because this was the type of position that she held at Konoha's hospital in her former life. Sakura offered advice and took care of particularly complicated wounds on her own but, overall, the volunteer assistance allowed Sakura to conserve some of her chakra while treating 5 times as many patients. Sasuke hardly spoke a word to Sakura for the duration of his shift. He stood at the entrance of the tent, directed patients to medical stations, and helped small children and those with mobility impairments onto the beds. When Sakura stopped for a short break, she noticed that the youngest medical ninja blushed deeply each time Sasuke approached her station. She placed a hand on his arm after he lifted a child onto the bed she was tending to. Thanks Sasuke-kun, she said sweetly while shooting him a wide smile and tucking a strand of her flaming red hair behind her ear. He nodded dismissively and then noticed Sakura resting on a chair at the back of the tent. Oblivious to both girls' irritated expressions, he approached her with his hands tucked in his pockets. Calling it quits? He asked. No. I'm just taking a break, she said a little defensively while stretching out her arms. It was only now that she was finally sitting down that she realized just how much her body was aching. All right, he answered and taking the seat beside her. All the beds were currently occupied so his patient traffic control services weren't needed up at the front. They gazed out at the villagers waiting patiently in line and the volunteer medics hard at work. Sakura's healing tent was transforming into a rather efficient system. And despite how the tent was filled with injured and sick individuals, the villagers' spirits were high and Sakura was presented with countless thank yous and homemade gifts. I can't believe you did this, Sasuke mumbled after a few minutes. He was leaning back with his arms folded. Neither can I, Sakura answered honestly while admiring a hand-crafted piece of jewelry a woman had given her after Sakura extracted poison from her husband's leg. I guess they don't have a functional or affordable hospital around here. Not that the villagers here can afford much at all. And the more she thought about the dreadful living conditions in the land of waves, the more she loathed that slimy, selfish billionaire, Gato. Worst of all, Gato was determined to destroy Tezuna's bridge and trap the villagers here. I've been thinking, Sakura, Sasuke said slowly while staring out at the ever-shrinking line of wounded villagers. Sakura turned to him and raised her eyebrows. And I want to know about your revenge. Oh. Sakura's heart rate quickened and she felt perspiration that had nothing to do with her exhaustion dampen her forehead. He didn't seem to notice. Yeah. I don't know a thing about your past. Sakura's mouth grew very dry. She didn't have a prepared answer for this. And she wasn't about to wing it and risk exposing too much about her mission. He shot her a glance and she quickly averted her gaze. She couldn't afford for him to see through her like he usually did. Not right now. But Sakura could feel his expectant eyes trained on her as she racked her brain for any excuse to get away. Sakura. I need your help. Sakura spun in the direction of the new voice, instantly relieved. Thank the gods. The medical ninja with the obvious thing for Sasuke was waving her over. Sakura sprang to her feet and motioned to join the woman. Not now, she muttered to Sasuke as she made a beeline for the redhead station. She didn't care if the medic was just trying to catch his attention or, more likely, redirect Sasuke's attention away from her. Sakura needed to buy time before he approached her again. At dinner, Kakashi claimed, to Sakura more than anyone, that Team 7 would be training as a group the following afternoon. I have a special exercise in mind, he said. By then, to Sakura's relief, she discovered that her tent was self-sustaining enough to proceed without her presence for a few hours. Donations of medical supplies had been offered to Sakura's team, and they now had a variety of medications, bandages, and reference books to use, allowing them to treat a wider range of conditions. She bid the other medics farewell before she and Naruto, who had been on guard duty, left for the forest to meet Sasuke and Kakashi and start training. Upon their arrival, Kakashi announced that he would show them how to climb enormous trees in an unusual fashion. Then, with his crutches in hand, he started walking up a tree with his body parallel to the ground. Naruto and Sasuke stared at him in amazement while he explained how just the right amount of chakra had to be exerted from the foot for it to stick to the tree trunk. Sasuke shot Sakura a sideways glance during Kakashi's explanation, and Sakura knew that he was thinking of the exercise she taught him where they stuck shuriken to their hands. Sakura nodded back. This tree climbing would involve the exact same kind of chakra control. When put to the test, Sakura raced up to the top of the tree as she had in her former life. She always excelled in chakra control. Her teammates, on the other hand, struggled. After 20 minutes, Naruto managed to climb about 10 feet up and Sasuke, 20 feet. He was excelling faster than he did in Sakura's previous life thanks to his private training with Sakura, but he still had a lot of work to do. Kakashi admitted he was unsurprised by Sakura's excellence at climbing the trees since she was a practicing medical ninja. Medical ninjutsu users are the chakra control elitists of the ninja world, he explained to the boys. Sakura is even way out of my league, so I suggest you consult her if you need any help. Naruto immediately claimed Sakura as his personal coach. Before she even looked at him, she knew that Naruto's main issue was his lack of concentration. She stared up at the markings Naruto had made in the tree to track his progress. He had hardly improved in the hour they had been training, as indicated by how all of the marks in his tree were clumped around the bottom. Naruto was glaring at Sasuke's tree, which bore markings that reached twice as high as his. This sucks, he mumbled. He's doing so much better than me. You can beat him, Sakura encouraged. Not at this rate, he said with a frustrated sigh. Sakura frowned. She needed to fix his uncharacteristic gloominess or he wouldn't improve at all. Tell you what, she said. Whoever gets to the top of the tree first gets to take me on a date. As anticipated, Naruto's eyes instantly lit up. Nothing fired the guy up more than a competition. A date, HM? He repeated thoughtfully while turning to Sasuke and squaring his shoulders to size him up. Yeah. Yeah, I like the sound of that. Prepare to get your butt kicked, bastard. And then Naruto was gunning it up the tree with a new rush of adrenaline. Sasuke rolled his eyes at his teammates and continued training in silence. Neither of the boys made it up the tree before supper. After they ate, the two of them left for the forest and practiced late into the night until they were both almost entirely out of chakra. Meanwhile, Sakura stayed with Tazuna's family and slept soundly to replenish enough of her chakra to help out at the medical tent the following day. The next night, after Sakura spent the day alternating between working at her tent and guarding Tazuna at the bridge, Sasuke and Naruto finally made it to the top of the trees. They emerged into Tazuna's house while everyone else was sitting around the dinner table. Sasuke hoisted Naruto in, who was struggling to walk. We did it. Naruto exclaimed breathlessly. We both made it to the top. Excellent, Kakashi said with a nod of approval. And I am nearly healed. We are just about ready to provide our bodyguard services as a team. Yeah. Believe it. Naruto said, and reaching up to punch the air but forgetting his arm was hooked around Sasuke's shoulders. As a result, he hit Sasuke square in the jaw and sent them both toppling to the floor. After a long, nasty exchange, and Tazuna going on a spiel about how having Kakashi's team around was keeping him youthful, the boys finally reached the table and wolfed down their food like the tired, starving teenagers they were. Naruto only paused to speak to Sakura. "Oh, and I'm terribly sorry, Sakura-chan, but Sasuke made it to the top of the tree about 10 seconds before I did. So I guess we won't go on a date after all." Sasuke swallowed his mouthful with a huge gulp and slammed down his chopsticks. "More like 10 hours, dumbass," he snapped. "I spent most of the day stopping you from falling out of your tree." "Well, you were just showing off," Naruto snarled through a mouthful of food. "I pretended to fall so I could test you." The arguing continued, but Sakura's mind started to wander. Had Sasuke really learned to climb the tree that much earlier than Naruto? Of what she remembered, the two of them had been on par in her previous life. If so, he was gaining new skills at a miraculously fast pace. Did this mean he would learn all the skills he could from Konoha earlier than his former self did? Would he grow bored faster and seek out other sources of power? Would he leave the village earlier? Was she just speeding up the downward spiral that his former self was caught in? "Sakura-chan? Are you okay?" She blinked and noticed all heads at the table turn in her direction. "You look pale," said Kakashi, who had been talking to the bridge builder and his family. "I think you all of you should get some rest tonight. I forbid training after hours." "Right," Sakura said while shaking her head and blinking rapidly to pull herself back to the present. After supper, Sakura offered to clean the dishes so she could think without any distractions. She needed to reassess her mission and everything she was doing with her new life. If she was going to save Sasuke herself, she needed to get strong enough to stop him from leaving. But if he was growing at the same rate she was, it didn't matter how strong she got. He would always overpower her. Before her mind got any further in its mulling, Sasuke appeared beside Sakura and reached for a dirty plate. "What are you doing?" she asked. Her body tensed up at the sight of him. "Helping," he answered simply while avoiding eye contact and passing her the freshly scrubbed plate to rinse. Sakura pursed her lips. She very well knew that washing dishes wasn't why Sasuke was here. He's going to ask about my revenge again. And Sakura hadn't gotten around to formulating an answer yet. She opened her mouth to say she had to leave, but he beat her to it. "I made it to the top of the tree first," he said without sparing her a glance. "Oh yeah?" she questioned, feeling a mixture of relief and unease at his unexpected choice of conversation. "That's good." She started rinsing the plate. Sakura tucked a loose strand of her shoulder-length hair behind her ear and peered through the window above the sink at the sun setting on the horizon. She took a moment to relish in the beauty of the pink and orange lights dancing across the water's surface and spotted the silhouettes of sailboats in the distance. It really was a beautiful village. There was a lot to cherish about this place despite the rampant poverty and political corruption. "We're not going on a date." Sakura dropped the dish she was holding onto the counter. What?" she stammered while quickly retrieving the plate to inspect it for cracks. Thankfully there weren't any, but now she was thoroughly embarrassed. A date? That was the last thing she expected Sasuke to bring up. Feeling flustered, she hastily said, "I wasn't expecting one," and turned back to the task at hand with increased focus. "Right," he answered before he also returned to the dishes. Now all Sakura could hear was the clanging and scrubbing of dishes and her heartbeat pounding in her ears. She couldn't stop her mind from racing. Why on earth was he talking to her about such trivial things right now? Did he really think Sakura was expecting a date, or was this just his awkward way of initiating small talk? Definitely the latter, she told herself firmly and willing her heart to slow down its beating. She determinedly kept her eyes trained on the mug she was aggressively scrubbing. She was so determined, in fact, that she didn't notice Sasuke flash step directly beside her until his lips were hovering beside her ear. His whisper was so soft that it was barely audible. "Let's train tonight," he said, and goosebumps raised where Sasuke's breath tickled the side of her neck. Sakura promptly dropped the mug onto the counter with a crash. It shattered. What are you? She started but was cut short when Sasuke shoved a hand over her mouth. Shut up, he hissed. Kakashi said no sneaking out, so I don't want him hearing. Sakura opened her mouth to speak but couldn't with her teammate's palm in the way, so she wrenched his hand off and finally stole a proper look at his face. And regretted it immediately. The light of the sunset was dancing across Sasuke's dark eyes, which were so close that she could make out the rims around his pupils. Her own dilated pupils flitted across his face and just took everything in. The unkempt bangs, the arch of his eyebrows, his straight nose, the curve of his jaw. It really wasn't fair how smitten she was. And to make it all worse, Sasuke's lips curled into a smirk, and Sakura hoped that it was because he interpreted her silence as compliance to train with him and not because he realized the utterly stupefying effect he had on her. She said, and hoping to somehow regain her composure but completely failing. That was when Naruto burst into the kitchen. Guys! It's bedtime now. Hey! What's going on in here? Sakura's head snapped around and she acknowledged that this interaction probably appeared as strange as it was. Sasuke and Sakura were facing each other in a pile of broken mud pieces, with Sakura gripping onto Sasuke's hand, the hand she had just forced away from her mouth. She released it immediately and turned on her heel. Perfect! She snapped. I'm going to bed. So am I, she heard Sasuke say as she stalked off. But Sakura made a mess and left, so I've got to clean this first. Although she technically hadn't agreed to train with Sasuke, Sakura settled into her sleeping bag fully clad in her backup training attire. And, surely enough, after lying down for 30 minutes, and just when she started to doze off, Sasuke roused her awake. He grabbed her hand before Sakura could instinctively reach for her knife and whispered, "Let's go." The two of them snuck out, treading lightly on the squeaky floorboards of Tazuna's house and back porch, and into the forest. Instead of her signature training clothes, Sakura was wearing a pair of gray cropped pants with her weapon holster strapped over the right thigh and a red, sleeveless top. Sasuke hadn't bothered putting on training gear at all, and she was pretty sure the black shirt and gray sweats he was wearing were what he normally slept in. Neither of them bothered to grab their forehead protectors on the way out either. At a slow jog, Sasuke led her through the trees in silence. The air was cool, but the starry sky was clear of clouds, which brightened their surroundings considerably. Soon they arrived at the clearing lined with tall trees where Team 7 previously trained together. I'm not very good at tree climbing yet, Sasuke admitted, breaking the silence and stopping in his tracks. I only made it to the top a few times. Well, show me what you can do, Sakura said while nodding in his direction and folding her arms across her chest. All right, he said. Sasuke closed his eyes and brought his hands together in a basic hand seal as he concentrated chakra to the soles of his feet. He proceeded to climb halfway up a tree before exerting too much chakra, which blasted a small hole into the trunk, and reeling backwards off of the tree. Damn it, he growled as he hopped from tree trunk to control his descent. I've done this before. Maybe I'm not concentrating enough. He gazed up at the branches and ran a hand through his messy, black hair. Sakura considered his comment. Maybe you're concentrating too much, she mused. Sasuke raised his eyebrows, prompting her to elaborate. You do have skills in chakra control. I've seen them. But I think you're pumping too much chakra to your feet because you're too focused on the task. He shrugged. But if I don't focus enough, I'll have the opposite problem, right? Sasuke had a point. What he needed was something to preoccupy him. Something that would shift his attention without completely distracting him from tree climbing. Sakura glanced around the clearing. They didn't have many supplies to work with, so she would have to get creative. How about, she said, and noticing a large pine cone on the ground beside a tree, we play catch. She smiled and tossed the pine cone to him. Catch? He repeated and shooting her a skeptical look. I don't have time for games. Hold up, I have an idea, she said, and raising a finger to pause him. Throw that pine cone as high as you can. After one more disbelieving glance, Sasuke obliged and sent the pinecone hurling up into the darkness. As quick as a flash, Sakura raced up the tree beside them with her eyes trained on the little brown speck, which was beginning its descent back towards the ground. Anticipating the point of interception, she sprang from the tree to catch it and landed on a tree on the opposite side of the clearing. She clung to the trunk with her feet and free hand. Then Sakura glanced down to where Sasuke stood about 30 feet below her. He was watching her with a raised eyebrow. "Fine. Maybe this isn't such a bad idea," he said. "Your turn," she called playfully and tossing the pinecone high into the clearing. Sasuke copied Sakura's former actions and managed to catch it. He landed on the tree beside her, clinging to it with only his feet. It took Sasuke a moment to steady himself, but once he caught his breath and gained his bearings, Sakura glimpsed his ghost of a smile before he threw the pinecone into the air again. She was right, it seemed. His chakra control was flawless when it wasn't the only thing on his mind. A long game of catch ensued. The two teammates bounded through the branches, flew through the clearing, and clung to the tree trunks with various parts of their bodies. They made it up very high in the trees, and Sasuke didn't even seem to notice until Sakura pointed it out. This was by far the most enjoyable training exercise they'd done yet. In fact, this was the most fun Sakura had had in as long as she could remember. She hardly noticed the cool air against her bare arms now that her muscles were engaged and her heart was racing. She felt like a kid again. Like her former young teenage self who didn't have the weight of her time travel mission to bear. The game of catch came to an end when Sasuke accidentally hit her with the pinecone. He froze and eyed the red mark on her leg. "I didn't mean," he started while leaping over to her tree, but she interrupted by throwing the pinecone right back at him. He managed to catch it just before it hit him square in the chest. Sakura laughed at his surprised reaction and jumped out of sight in preparation for the return fire. And that was how the game of catch became a pinecone fight. They spent the next 30 minutes firing the small wooden ball at each other while climbing higher and higher through the trees. Sakura absently wondered if Sasuke was enjoying himself. She had a feeling he was, especially when she caught him smirking at some of her more ridiculous acrobatic attempts to dodge the pinecone, several of which nearly sent her plummeting to the ground, and how his attacks became progressively more ruthless as the game went on. Sasuke didn't come off as the kind of person to enjoy silly, mindless games, but perhaps he just never really had an opportunity to. That was when Sakura spotted her teammate slip behind a trunk near the very top of a tree and she decided to launch a surprise attack. She crept up the tree beside it and then sprang down onto the branch and fired the pinecone in the direction of his chakra signature. But he wasn't there. The pinecone struck the trunk, bounced onto the branch, and started its 70-foot descent to the ground. She made no motion to catch it. Sakura was baffled. She had been certain Sasuke was here. She whirled around but now even his chakra was undetectable. "Sasuke?" She called out quietly but she received no answer. Sakura pressed herself to the tree trunk and listened intently for any sign of rustling branches or footsteps. Her ears were only met with sounds of the night. Folding her arms across her chest, Sakura whirled around and shouted, "No fair. Stop hiding your chakra like that." But only the soft chirping of crickets and the distant hoot of an owl answered her. Frowning, Sakura scanned her surroundings for any trace of her teammate's head poking out from the branches, but to no avail. How did he totally disappear like that? Did something happen? Anxiety began to well up inside of her as thoughts of a certain ninja hunter who lurked around this village crept into her mind. And then a thought spiral began as the image of another villain, this one snake-like and after Sasuke, found its way into her mind's eye. "Sasuke-kun!" Sakura cried and failing to hide the desperation in her voice. A pinecone hit the back of her head. She spun around to find Sasuke standing on a nearby branch with his arms folded and a smug look plastered on his face. "You underestimate my ability to conceal chakra," he said while shaking his head. "Calm down." Sakura turned away defiantly and was thankful that it was too dark for him to see her flushed face. "You cheated," she said. "It's just a game. You didn't have to hide your chakra like that." Sasuke hopped over to her branch. You're just saying that because you're losing, he gloated with a shrug. And before Sakura could really comprehend his comment or open her mouth to retort, a loud snap resounded below them and her stomach somersaulted because she was falling. Evidently, the branch couldn't support both of their weights. Sakura's body froze in shock as it plummeted towards the ground, scraping against branches and snapping small twigs. She didn't pay attention to the pain though because she needed to get a hold of herself and grip onto something. That was when Sakura was thrust backwards against the tree trunk with a force that nearly knocked the breath out of her. It took a few seconds for Sakura to process that Sasuke had stopped her fall by sandwiching her against the tree. His chakra-loaded hands and feet were pressed to the trunk as anchors and were even secure enough for Sakura to stand on his feet. Thanks. She gasped into his ear between heavy breaths. Good thing you can stick to trees now, she added with a breathless chuckle. And before she could stop it, the chuckle became giggle. And the giggle escalated into a full-blown laughing fit. This really was an unusual predicament to be in. Last month, Sasuke Uchiha was a wanted rogue ninja plotting the mass destruction of the Hidden Leaf Village. Before this month, in fact, the only time Sakura had seen her beloved ex-teammate in the past 3 years, he had been aiming a Chidori-riddled sword at her heart or had a hand around her throat. And now here they were, united again, pressed together against a tree trunk 70 feet in the air in the heat of a vicious pinecone fight. Water pooled in Sakura's tear ducts. Sasuke drew his head back to get a proper view of her face. What? He asked. His tone was serious, but the way his lips were pursed told her that he was probably biting back a smile or maybe even a laugh of his own. But Sakura was so long gone that she couldn't even choke out a response. She lifted a hand to wipe her eyes and Sasuke patiently watched her from his position a few inches away until she finally managed to compose herself. Done yet? He asked and cocking an eyebrow. Sakura exhaled deeply from her nose. I think so, she said and peering up at him through teary eyes. But that was when it dawned on her just how close he was. Instinctively, Sakura turned her face away and pressed her head harder into the tree trunk, her breath catching and her heart thumping. Sasuke seemed to take this as his cue to help his teammate down onto the nearest branch. Well, this one seems stronger, he noted as he sat himself down onto the branch. He beckoned for Sakura to join him. They sat there in silence for a moment, shoulder and shoulder, and gazed out at the forest, the village in the distance, and the starry night sky. Crickets softly chirped and leaves rustled in the soft breeze. It was both relaxing and exhilarating to be so high up in the air and have such a stunning view of the land of waves. It took a while for Sakura to notice that her palms were aching from cuts caused by the tree trunks in their game and scrapes from the branches during their fall. And if her hands were sore, so were Sasuke's. Without a moment's hesitation, Sakura reached for his hand, which was resting on his thigh nearest to her, and directed a steady stream of medical chakra into it. Sasuke seemed startled by her touch, but he didn't resist her kind gesture. He flipped his hand over to give her access to his palm, which had sustained the most damage from the rough tree bark. Sasuke watched patiently while she finished up with his first hand before offering her the other. Only then did he speak. Sakura, he said quietly and staring down at the green glow encompassing their hands. Will you tell me about your revenge now? Sakura's stomach flipped like she'd fallen clean off the branch. Of course, she realized. That's what this entire night was really about. She kept her eyes trained on their hands and bit her lip. I need to buy time. Is this information your reward for winning the bet? She asked with a small, forced smile. Sasuke responded with a look that told her he had no idea what she was talking about. You know, the one over the eraser. On the day we met Kakashi-sensei. His eyes widened in understanding but he shook his head. No, he said slowly. I'm not trying to pressure you. Sakura nodded as her smile faltered. I have no idea where to begin, she said, and staring off into the distance so he couldn't see the panic written all over her face. Now what? He had her trapped up here in this damn tree, and she really didn't have time to formulate a believable cover-up. This is what our game boiled down to, huh? Sasuke didn't care to help her with the dishes or play catch with pine cones. All along he was trying to soften her up so she'd give him the information he wanted. A bitter taste rose in her mouth. That sneaky, manipulative Uchiha. Well, how about I ask you some questions? He said, and his question came out as a statement. Sakura nodded slowly and pulled her hands away from her teammates' healed ones. She figured that if she was selective with her answers, maybe this wouldn't be so bad. And it wasn't like Sasuke had any friends or secret correspondences who he confided in anyways. All right then, he said. You mentioned training under a mentor. Who is it? Sakura stared determinedly at her hands, racking her brain for a convincing lie. She couldn't think of one. Oh, to hell with it all. One of the 3 legendary Sannin, she answered quietly. I've heard about them, was Sasuke's reply, his voice filled with surprise. Which one? Sakura gulped. This was risky, but it was too late to go back now. Tsunade Senju. One of the most powerful medical ninjas in the world. I am or was her apprentice. Sakura started channeling medical chakra to her own cuts to busy herself. That explains a lot, Sasuke mumbled. But she doesn't know who I am anymore, she added hurriedly. An incident happened and her memories of me were erased. Sakura's hands began to tremble because technically she wasn't lying. Sasuke seemed to notice her discomfort and didn't ask for details on the incident. He waited patiently for her to continue. And just before the incident, she assigned me a mission. A mission? He repeated. Is that what your revenge is about? Completing a mission? Yeah, she said. Her palms were fully healed now, but she continued staring down at them intently. I was appointed the mission because apparently my mentor thought I would get strong enough to complete it, and, well, because I have a personal investment in the cause. Her voice was shaking now. I don't really want to talk about it. Sakura could hardly believe what she was voicing. It was easy, far too easy to see Sasuke as a confidant figure. And as nice as having someone to talk to was, she was getting far too close to exposing more about herself than she probably should. After a moment, Sasuke said, I'm sorry. Sakura daringly allowed her eyes to flicker to his face, but when she saw how intensely he was watching her, she averted them again. Just one more question for now, he said, and Sakura mentally released a huge sigh of relief. Sasuke clearly sensed her discomfort and was winding this conversation down. You said that someone important to you was taken away, he continued, and Sakura's heart immediately began to pound. Were you talking about your mentor? He just had to ask about that. Sakura thought with a grimace. He's perceptive, isn't he? Sasuke had clearly paid attention to her introductory speech a month ago. No, she answered, and shaking her head. But it's someone who I love more than anything. She had an unnerving hunch that her face was flaming red now. She didn't anticipate the conversation taking a turn in this direction. This is so awkward. Family? He asked quietly. No, not family, she said, and staring down at the ground below while fighting against the influx of painful memories. Sakura sensed her teammate shift and hesitantly spared him a glance, only to find that he was blinking at her with an expression of utter confusion. Really? I didn't know you, he started before abruptly turning his head in the opposite direction and letting out a slow breath. He was absently drumming his fingers against his kneecap. Sakura puzzled over his unusual change in demeanor. And then it dawned on her. She jerked her head upright. Sasuke was now on his feet. All right, that was the last question, he said curtly. Let's head back. It's late. Sasuke, she started, but he began his descent from the tree without sparing her a glance, leaving Sakura alone on the branch. She couldn't believe the improbability of this situation. Something Sakura said had quite obviously unsettled, perhaps even shocked, her teammate. And she had an absurd, sneaking suspicion that she knew what it was. He thinks I'm in love with someone else,